Chapter 682. Wuchen couldn't help but be speechless. A person always degenerates in peace. This saying was not wrong at all. When one is full, one will think of lust. A peaceful and beautiful environment always slowly annihilates a person's hot-bloodedness and makes him lose his ambition. After taking a deep breath, she stabilized her fluctuating impatience. The flame of desire in Wu Chen's eyes was extinguished. Her clean face calmed down, and she returned to her usual indifferent self. His eyes lost the fiery color from before, and were replaced with an unchanging indifference. Beauty trap doesn't work on me, Tsunade. Dustless's heart was as calm as water. The light accent was like a gust of wind, guiding all kinds of emotions out of the mind, full of absolute reason. A pair of deep eyes were shining, looking at Tsunade like a torch. Immediately, the pupils of Dustless's eyes turned sharply. A piece of clothing that Dustless usually uses for himself was thrown to Tsunade. He has completely used Kamui as a storage space. Tsunade, who grabbed the clothes, hurriedly put them on. She tried to be as bold as possible, but it didn't mean that she could directly fight with Dustless without clothes. By the way, the speed of your progress is really amazing. Staring at the broken ground, it was as if it was hit by a meteorite. It collapsed, a large deep pit appeared, and countless dense cracks appeared. Of course, this is Kagaya's sister's guidance. Of course, the progress is fast. Not only me but also Terumi Mei, Red Lotus, and that little girl Cheyenne. The fastest progress is your first wife, Yuluo. Maybe she has surpassed you. Tsunade chuckled, with pride and arrogance in her words, trying to catch disappointment from Dustless's face, but he was as still as a rock. Kagaya's sister? Dustless's face was strange, and his mind was uncontrollably cold. He always felt that this name was neither fish nor fowl. Then he didn't think much about it, and the corner of his mouth outlined a faint smile. Tsunade can call Kagaya so intimately, indicating that they get along very well with each other. As for whether Yuluo could really surpass him, Dustless didn't care. It wasn't realistic. Even Huey wasn't his match, let alone Yuluo. At the same time, Tsunade's momentum continued to rise. Even before she made a move, Dustless could vaguely see the cracks in the air. Haven't you had enough? Dustless frowned and said. Tsunade just chuckled when she heard this. You should at least let me familiarize myself with this tremor fruit. Tsunade smiled tenderly, extremely serious. Dustless didn't comment. This was true. He had just eaten the tremor fruit for less than an hour. It was indeed necessary to familiarize himself with some unknown abilities. After using it to the extreme, he could enter the Devil Fruit's higher level ability, Devil Fruit Awakening. Where's Huey? They have a lot of free time. Why don't you go find them? I'm very busy, Dustless asked. In the systems world, they had nothing to do and were bored out of their minds. Every time they got together, they would mostly brag about their past. After a long time, these women were even better at bragging than Dustless. Them? Tsunade shook her head resolutely when she heard this. They all stop at a certain point. It's difficult to understand the fruit's ability at a deeper level. Only you have a black heart and never show any mercy. This is suitable. Dustless's face suddenly twitched when he heard this, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Staring at Tsunade with gloomy eyes, Dustless opened his mouth to refute, but he couldn't speak because this was a fact. This was also why Yuluo and others often asked him to practice, so Dustless rarely showed mercy. Since it was a training, there was no need to hold back. Between suffering more now and bleeding in the future, which was more important, Wu Chen was naturally clear as a mirror. Therefore, every time he squeezed out their strength to the greatest extent, he chose to ruthlessly destroy the flowers and teach them a lesson. Only when a person was forced into a desperate situation could the body's potential erupt. For example, Luffy's Haushiko Haki was awakened because of this. Without pressure, there would be no motivation. Only deadly pressure can give them the motivation to improve. Dustless walked this way in the past. Since you still came to me. This is what you asked for, Tsunade. Dustless's expression solidified, and his face instantly became cold. Tsunade knew that Dustless was such a person, but she still came to train with him, indicating that she was mentally prepared. Dustless naturally won't show mercy. The palm of his hand was aimed at the sky below, exuding dangerous energy fluctuations. Dustless's expression was cold, and his left eye had been replaced by the Tensigan. Good luck. I hope you can touch the ability of Tremor Fruit as soon as possible, as well as its true form. The majestic repulsive force condensed in his hand, and immediately roared mercilessly. Boom! The ground with a radius of tens of miles burst open in an instant, shaking violently, and immediately collapsed. Tsunade, who was caught off guard, lost her balance and fell directly into it. As for whether it can hurt Tsunade, Dustless is not worried. Her exuberant vitality is enough to guarantee everything. Especially with the recent guidance of Kagaya. She has a more thorough understanding of the control of Baihao Jutsu and In Seal. In the entire system world, except for Dustless and Kagaya, it is estimated that Tsunade's vitality and healing ability are the strongest. Boom, boom, boom. A black shadow on the ground jumped out of thin air, and almost instantly, it roared up like a cannonball. What an amazing jumping ability! Dustless secretly clicked his tongue, jumping nearly 100 meters in an instant, far beyond the physique of a ninja. I said, I won't show mercy. In that case, you should go down obediently. His eyes emitted a cold light, and Dustless's body emitted a golden double-sided Susanoo, making the same handprint as his body. The sky suddenly darkened. Tungai Season. Chapter 683. The pitch-black shadow covered the sky and covered the earth. All things lost their light and appeared to be in a state of wailing. Everything in the world seemed to be in a state of collapse. The pitch-black shadow shrouded an area that was boundless and filled one with despair. This indescribable oppression was unparalleled, and the lazy white clouds in the sky were crushed by the vast momentum, revealing his ferocious appearance. A meteorite with a diameter of more than 10 kilometers slowly fell. How can this kind of thing be useful? I'm not as weak as before. Her beautiful eyes were filled with confidence. Tsunade rushed up, swept past Dustless's body, and rushed straight toward the meteorite in the sky at full speed. Kakaka! Her arm was covered with a white halo, and countless cracks appeared in the air. The range was almost unlimited, and it swallowed 1/10 of the meteorite. Even so, the power it unleashed was enough to stun anyone. Boom boom boom, the center of the meteorite, because that was where Tsunade bombarded with full force, suddenly trembled fiercely, and the whole meteorite gave the illusion that it was lifted a little for a moment, and it stopped falling. Kakaka! The crisp sound of the explosion came into the ears, and the tiny cracks spread rapidly, almost like a whale swallowing the entire surface of the meteorite. Didn't you always say that a scholar who has been away for 3 days should be looked at with new eyes, Dustless? Why do you always look at others with the same eyes? Tsunade smiled. As her voice fell, the meteorite in the sky finally couldn't bear the pressure, and began to peel off. Boom boom boom. Several loud rumbling sounds swept out of the sky, and then the sky was filled with a dust rain, all of which were composed of various large and small meteorite fragments. The scene was very spectacular. So what? It's boring. Wuchen said softly, his face expressionless. The dazzling light condensed at the tip of his finger, and immediately whistled out. This strange energy impact was unparalleled, full of evil oppression, and terrifying energy fluctuations. This is Baijidama. Staring at the golden ball in Dustless's hand, Tsunade was shocked. The evil and gloomy chakra was obviously a high-density Baijidama, and the condensed chakra was huge, and its power was several times stronger than the Kyubi she had seen before. Boom boom boom. A huge ball of fire rose up in the void, and the scattered soil was instantly engulfed and annihilated. The dark sky once again regained its sunny appearance. Glancing at Tsunade, Dustless leaned over. This battle continued for several hours before it ended. Without a doubt, it ended with Dustless's victory. The winner has the spoils of war. Naturally, he won't easily let go of the exhausted Tsunade. He whipped her until she fainted. Only then did Wuchen settle the matter. Dustless chose to coldly suppress this matter for the sake of a man's reputation. When Dustless woke up the next morning, it was already late in the morning. Wuchen, who was sleeping, frowned. Suddenly, He felt that there was something soft in the quilt. He gently pulled open the soft chonk quilt. A little girl who was curled up like a kitten came into view. Yushi. Dustless's pupils dilated as a hint of surprise flashed through his eyes. He instinctively touched his clothes. Fortunately, this little girl didn't mess around. Wuchen breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at the little girl who was sleeping soundly, he pinched her rosy cheeks and then shook his head helplessly. His mischievous daughter liked to be mischievous and pranks the most. She often did some unbearable things. Even Dustless was pranked by her. Father. In a trance, aware of Dustless's movements, Yushi opened her eyes and looked at the serious face of Dustless. When she was about to ask, Dustless's solemn voice came in advance. Yushi, why are you in my room? I remember I put you back yesterday. Dustless's face was stiff, and his tone was a little angry. This little girl was getting more and more unruly. In the middle of the night, she actually launched a sneak attack. If he always let her do as she pleased, maybe there will be a big mess in the future. Yushi's eyes narrowed into crescent moons, and her delicate face revealed a small dimple. Obviously, she had expected Dustless to ask such a question. Father, look carefully. Yushi's tone was sly, and the corner of her mouth was hidden with a teasing smile. Looking around, Dustless was suddenly petrified. The room was exactly the same as before. The only difference was that this was Yushi's room. Yesterday when father was sleeping, I took the opportunity to snatch you, Yushi proudly said as she looked down at Dustless with her hands on her hips. Yesterday, Dustless was unconscious, so she transported him overnight. His old face collapsed, and Dustless's face unconsciously twitched. When he went into the system world, he did not expect this little girl to take advantage of the loophole. Come here, you are not allowed to do this kind of thing in the future. Pulling Yushi in front of him, Dustless coldly reprimanded. This little girl is getting bolder and bolder. Today it may be her room, but another day she may throw Dustless into the sea. Thinking of Yushi's strange temperament, Dustless felt a headache and helplessness. Sighing inwardly, he pushed all the responsibility to Huiji. This was the result of her indulgence. Yesterday I smelled a disgusting smell from father's body. Wrinkling her white jade-like nose, Yushi pouted in dissatisfaction. Her heart was abnormally unhappy. Smell? Dustless curiously asked. The smell of other women. It must be because of father's private life. You even had those disgusting erotic dreams. You are not young anymore. Don't be like a child all day. Yushi lectured. Dustless's old face was red, and the blood in his heart was boiling. He almost spat out a mouthful of old blood, but he could not say anything. Chapter 684. Dustless's old face turned green, and he could only smile bitterly. For this strange daughter he was helpless. He couldn't beat her or scold her. It was really a headache. Every time he taught this little girl a lesson, Yushi would cry and complain to Kagaya, and Kagaya inevitably scolded Dustless. Rubbing her black hair, Dustless lazily lay on the bed, closed his eyes and smelled the girl's faint fragrance, and his thoughts became active. He involuntarily began to think about the situation of today's world. I must have guessed it. Seeing that Wu Chen was silent, little Yushi nodded seriously. In her heart, she naturally thought that Wu Chen was in the wrong. Then, she happily jumped around on the bed. Like a little elf, sometimes she would rub on Dustless's body, laughing coquettishly and acting cute, causing Dustless to roll his eyes, but he didn't stop Yushi. Father, I want to be a pirate. Blinking her eyes, Yushi suddenly said something surprising. Dustless didn't object and looked at Yushi with interest. I need a suitable reason, and the daughter of a marine admiral is going to be a pirate. It's very bad for my reputation. Dustless reprimanded with a straight face. In fact, he didn't care. Pirates and marines didn't mean much to Dustless, and the pirates he secretly raised were not a small number. And they were all the best kind of pirates. More free and happy than now. Tilting her head, Yushi answered. Liar. Dustless pinched Yushi's face and stared at Yushi's shining pupils. His eyes became cold for a moment, directly seeing her heart. Seeing Wu Chen's elegant smile, Yushi hurriedly avoided his gaze. She didn't dare to look at Wu Chen. She leaned against Wu Chen's stomach and acted coquettishly, saying in a coquettish voice, I will spy for father. Dustless was speechless. He didn't expect this little girl to spy on him. I'm talking about information on beauties. I'm specifically searching for all kinds of beauties for father to satisfy your cravings. Yushi's eyes flashed with unshakable determination as she clenched her fists and said seriously. That sonorous and powerful voice was like an oath, causing Dustless to be at a loss. His eyes twitching violently, Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at Yushi. He no longer paid any attention to her, minding his own business as he put on his clothes. Sometimes the more you talk, the more mistakes you make. The worst part was that this little girl would often report to Huey and Dustless's other female friends, making things difficult for Dustless. In the eyes of those women, Dustless had unknowingly turned from a gentleman to a sex fiend. And according to Yushi's description, it was an extremely perverted kind. Father is going to deal with those pirates again? Unlike the past, little Yushi hugged the pillow. Her beautiful voice was less crisp and sweet-sounding, and more reluctant and a touch of loneliness. Dustless's footsteps suddenly stopped, and his face flashed with a complicated expression. In fact, he knew that Yushi was like Uzumaki Naruto, always attracting his attention with all kinds of amazing actions. In the next few years, father will accompany you every day. Dustless rubbed Yushi's long black hair, and then leaned over to Yushi's side. His dry lips fell on little Yushi's clean forehead as he vowed. Hearing this, Yushi's eyes flashed with joy, and the corner of her mouth also had an excited smile. But the moment she raised her head, she saw Dustless's evil smile. Her perfect little face suddenly stiffened, and the smile on the corner of her mouth disappeared in an instant. She said insincerely, "Smelly, don't touch me in the future, old man." After that, she wiped the remaining water stains on her forehead for fear of being contaminated by Dustless. This little girl is really arrogant. Dustless stared at Yushi and then simply walked out of her room. The observant Dustless naturally knew that Yushi was deliberately pretending for him to see. Boom. The moment the door closed, there was a cheer in the room. In the quiet study, Dustless quietly looked at the information sent by White Zetsu. Most of it was about the New World pirates and the movements of the Marine headquarters. Dustless did not say anything about capturing Fire Fist Ace and pretended that nothing had happened. Unlike the calm Dustless, the Whitebeard pirates were in a hurry, and the whole world was frantically looking for Ace. For Ace, Whitebeard liked him very much. That old guy is too attached to feelings, so he was used by Sengoku. If he pretended to be cold, Sengoku might not have the idea of capturing Fire Fist Ace. This is his own fault, and he can't blame others. Dustless whispered softly, "This kind of thing is a double-edged sword, hurting others and hurting oneself." Dustless, Sama is now going to give Fire Fist Ace to Sengoku? White Zetsu asked. Hearing this, Dustless bowed his head and thought for a few seconds, and shook his head resolutely. Even if he gave Ace to Sengoku now, Sengoku may not be fooled. Sengoku used to be called a wise admiral, and the great staff officer of the Marine headquarters. These people are the old antiques of the previous era. They are very deep and have unique vision. It is certainly impossible to give Ace to them. In other ways, it will not arouse Sengoku's suspicion. Otherwise, it will only be self-defeating. Today, Sengoku has been a fleet admiral for more than 10 years. Even if Ace is handed over to him, he will not blindly fight with Whitebeard without absolute certainty. If he is not careful, the Marine may fall into a hopeless situation. By the way, how is Ace doing recently? Dustless, who had no countermeasures for the time being, asked. Him? He can eat and drink, he is alive and kicking all day long. He will satirize me and seems to be talking about Luffy. White Zetsu said bitterly. Straw Hat Luffy has a good relationship with Ace. I can make use of him. A cold light flashed across Dustless's mouth. The corner of his mouth raised a strange curve. Chapter 685. Sengoku is not an idiot. Once he thinks that the Marine headquarters does not have the strength to compete with the Whitebeard pirates, even if he gives Fire Fist Ace to him, he will not publicly execute him. Quietly imprison Ace in the Impel Down, or directly execute him secretly, so that no one would know. I am afraid that Sengoku will not publicly execute him. Because of Dustless Sama, many of the Yonko for emperors have secretly chosen to join forces. The consequences of rashly executing Fire Fist Ace will not be borne by Sengoku. It is likely that Dustless will join forces with the other 3 Yonko, 4 emperors, to attack the marine headquarters together. Due to Dustless's oppression, the 4 emperors had no choice but to work together secretly. Since they couldn't fight one-on-one, they could only gang up. This was also forced out by Dustless, and it was all thanks to him. That's right. Wuchen nodded in agreement. Blackbeard also blamed Dustless for Surd's death, but he didn't see Whitebeard take revenge, indicating that Whitebeard has been worn out by Dustless, so it is possible for him to join forces with other Yonko, 4 emperors, such as Red Hair Shanks and the like. The marine headquarters can barely cope with 1 Yonko, 4 emperors, and dealing with 2 at the same time is equivalent to a dead end. No matter what, we must let Sengoku publicly execute Fire Fist Ace. This is not up to him. Wuchen said in a low voice, and his tone was more inviolable. The leadership was not in the hands of the warring states from the beginning. He can only go with the flow, and the only way to go against the flow is to die. The more chaotic the world is, the more obvious the opportunities and advantages of Dustless will be. If he wants to seize the dominance of the world, he must first stir up this pool of water, so that he can fish in troubled water with peace of mind. Dustless's eyes were shining. Although because of his trouble, the Yonko 4 emperors joined forces, the process of history can never be changed. The only headache is how to give Ace to Sengoku. Obviously Sengoku, who is suspicious by nature, will suspect that Dustless is plotting against him. Ka ka ka. At this moment, there was a burst of messy footsteps in the corridor. Young master, Straw Hat Luffy has a bounty on him. It was Dustless's personal maid Boa Hancock. Dustless took the bounty list from Hancock's hand, and saw the smiling Manchi D. Luffy. He was quite excited. Straw Hat Luffy defeated Arlong, the leader of the Dragon Pirates, and his bounty was raised to 30 million berries. Hancock explained, somewhat with a hint of astonishment. With a bounty of 30 million berries, a newcomer with a bounty of 3,000 berries for the first time at sea is rare. White Zoo also smacked his tongue. His tone was surprised. Most of the rookies who went out to sea would only have a bounty of 10 to 20 million. There were even a few who had a few million bounties. It was unheard of for someone like Luffy to have a bounty of 30 million on his first mission. He's Garp's grandson. It's normal for the bounty to be exaggerated. Maybe the Marine headquarters knows that he's Garp's grandson. Maybe the bounty will be higher. Dustless said. The name on the bounty list is just Straw Hat Luffy. Maybe the Marine headquarters doesn't know that he's Garp's grandson. Otherwise, the bounty may become higher. But Luffy gave me an inspiration. It's a pity that I don't use such a good chess piece. Dustless's eyes were shining. He was worried that there was no way to give Fire Fist Ace to Sengoku. The appearance of Straw Hat Luffy made Dustless unexpectedly see the light of hope. Dustless, Sama is going to give Fire Fist Ace to Sengoku now? White Zoo frowned and asked. Hearing this, Dustless just shook his head. It's a bit early now. He's not the kind of impatient kid. It's not too late to use Luffy after everything is ready. Haste makes waste. Fire Fist Ace, let's ignore him for now. Although White Zoo has been shouting that Ace's injury has healed, Dustless estimated that the kid was actually pretending. He was seriously injured by him, and the bullet with armament hockey penetrated his abdomen. The wound healed extremely slowly. 80% of the time, he pretended to be healed, waiting to approach Dustless and take the opportunity to kill him. In this regard, Dustless can only shake his head helplessly. If he was so easy to kill, he would have fallen many years ago. It's that old boy Blackbeard. The thread of discussion suddenly turned, and Dustless pulled the source of the problem to Blackbeard. Seeing that Dustless didn't say anything about Ace's movements, the guy actually ran back to the Whitebeard pirates. It was as if nothing had happened and he was still sitting there as an unknown person. Blackbeard naturally wouldn't be so stupid as to tell Blackbeard about Ace's whereabouts. If that was the case, he wouldn't be able to escape responsibility. The most taboo of the Whitebeard pirates is killing each other. Blackbeard's actions have exceeded the bottom line of what Whitebeard can tolerate. He's still not dead, He's still plotting for Tremor fruit, Gura Gura no Mi. Dustless is sure that when he finds the right opportunity, Blackbeard will launch a sneak attack on Whitebeard. He's not the kind of person who knows how to be filial to Whitebeard. He won't hesitate to take the opportunity to kill him and replace him. Of course, the biggest reason is to seize Tremor fruit, Gura Gura no Mi. For the Tremor fruit, Gura Gura no Mi, Blackbeard has always been looking forward to it. As long as there is a suitable opportunity, he will grab it. Temporarily hiding the Whitebeard pirates can avoid being disturbed by others, and can also find suitable companions. Blackbeard's ultimate goal is a Yonko for emperors, and the higher pirate king. He naturally can't be alone, so he has to choose the right crew. Rumble. At this moment, an unexpected sound suddenly sounded. Dustless frowned at the Den Mushi and couldn't help but feel strange. Chapter 686. In the town, the people passing by had a satisfied smile on their faces, and they were working very well. Working hard to repair the town that was destroyed because of the fierce fight. Even though they were sweating, they were still happy to work. The spacious sports field was filled with the aroma of roasted meat. Flames were everywhere, and one could clearly see all kinds of livestock being slaughtered. There is no doubt that these are used to celebrate. Prisoners with hideous faces were tied to thick trees. These people's skin was different from human beings. They were blue or dark red, and they had sharp teeth. Their fierce appearance was obviously human. Looking closely, it was Arlong's group of dragon pirates. At this moment, they were all stunned and their eyes were shining, waiting for the Marines who were about to escort them to prison. The reason for the celebration was that Straw Hat Luffy defeated them and liberated the town from the crisis. So these kind and simple people entertained Luffy and others with hard-won wine and meat. Monchi D, Luffy, Reloja Zoro, and Sanji, including Nami who had just joined the pirates, were laughing and drinking, eating meat, and talking happily. The joy of victory also made them put aside their inner prejudices and be able to integrate well into everything. Poof. Luffy, you know a Marine Admiral? Sanji spat out the barbecue that he ate uncontrollably. He knew that the act of wasting food was shameful, but the restlessness in his heart was still difficult to suppress. I heard Zoro say that guy seems to be a Marine Admiral. I don't know what he does. Luffy explained while eating the sweeper barbecue. In the blink of an eye, all the barbecue was swept away by the wind. It is indeed a Marine Admiral. I saw it with my own eyes. The youngest and strongest admiral in history. Even if he was only wearing casual clothes at the time, he couldn't escape my eyes, Zoro confirmed with a sip of wine. At the same time, the hands holding the sword also flashed a touch of throbbing. Marine Admiral? That's a super creature at the top of the food chain, who can look down on the whole world, the real top power. Compared with Arlong, who was just defeated, there is a complete difference in dimension. Hearing this, Sanji and Nami looked at each other, and in the next second, both of them were petrified. They stared at Luffy who was eating meat in horror. This guy is simply setting himself on fire, and doesn't know how to write the word death. You know a Marine Admiral and you dare to be a pirate? Sanji and Nami looked at each other, and exclaimed in unison. He couldn't help but sweat for Luffy's courage. Knowing a Marine Admiral and daring to be a pirate without fear of death. I'm afraid this is the first time in history. Well, I don't care if that guy is a Marine Admiral or not. I just want to take risks, Luffy said while eating. Nami and Sanji were speechless and tangled for a while. They suddenly regretted that joining this temporary pirate group might be the worst choice in their lives. If the captain was so unreliable, who else could be trusted? I hope that Marine Admiral won't come to us. Sanji and Namawa can only pray silently in their hearts, hoping that Dustless will not come to their door. Other admirals may be okay, but if they are targeted by the youngest admiral, they will only end up dead. Over the years, the pirates who have been targeted by him have no choice but to go to Impel Down. Don't show such a surprised expression. He is not as scary as you think. Luffy showed an innocent and brilliant smile, giving people a feeling of peace and tranquility, like a spring breeze, like a panacea, making people feel relaxed. Luffy, you are really optimistic. Sanji felt helpless. When Zoro saw the two of them like this, he just shrugged his shoulders and acted as if it had nothing to do with him. In fact, he had the same expression as Sanji and Nami, being targeted by a Marine Admiral and still being so optimistic. I am afraid that only Luffy can be so optimistic in the world. That guy doesn't look like a bad guy. Last time I told him that I wanted to be a pirate, he just smiled. Luffy patted his chest and promised. He is indeed not a bad guy, but we are bad guys now, and his job is to capture bad guys like us who commit crimes. Nami rolled her eyes and had a deeper understanding of Luffy's strange thinking. At the same time, she regretted it. Just now, she had promised to join the Straw Hat Pirates and be Luffy's navigator. It's too late to regret now. Is a Marine Admiral strong? Even if he comes, I will definitely hit him and won't allow him to hurt my partners. When the word partners was mentioned, Luffy dropped the barbecue in his hand and his face was firm. Partners are even more important to him than life. That was before you had a bounty on your head. As a Marine, he naturally can't hurt innocent people. Don't forget, now you are a pirate with a bounty of 30 million berries. No one in East Blue has a higher bounty than you. The more potential a pirate has, the more likely they are to be the first target of the Marine. Nami's tone was worried. How strong a Marine Admiral is? It's hard to say. In short, he is very strong. An admiral is the highest battle power in the Marine, and is beyond people's imagination. The silent Sanji explained. Red-footed Zeph had once been in the New World, and described the horror of Admiral to Sanji. Pointing to Arlong's group who were tied up, Sanji said in a deep voice, maybe he can kill him with just 3 punches and 2 kicks. A mere 20 million pirates is just a small ant in front of an admiral. There is no need to do anything. Zoro, who had been silent all this time, opened his eyes, and his eyes shone with a cold light. Maybe it's just a casual glance, and I can easily kill that Arlong. There's no need for any extra movements. Meeting a general is enough to scare him out of his wits. Chapter 687. Luffy's eyes widened, and his hand that was eating meat stopped. He looked at Zoro in disbelief, as if he had seen a ghost. He spent so much effort to defeat the enemy, but Zoro said that an admiral may only need one look to subdue him. He subconsciously looked at his bandaged body, and suddenly felt that the scars on his body were not worth it. Don't think it's an exaggeration. The strength of an admiral is really beyond imagination. Only you don't understand the horror of an admiral. Luffy, you have to figure out that the entire Marine has about hundreds of thousands of people, and there are only 4 admirals. Nami explained. Zoro and Sanji were accustomed to it. They wandered outside all year round and naturally understood it better than Luffy. Gulp. Luffy unconsciously swallowed his breath. Thinking of Dustless's face, Luffy always felt that it was a bit of a fantasy, and he didn't see the slightest shadow of a strong person. He was a little sluggish. Although Luffy was ignorant, he also understood that pirates and Marines were 2 opposing organizations, which also showed that he would have to face terrifying enemies like Dustless in the future. Clenching his fist, for a moment his heart was as heavy as a mountain. Dustless's light smile filled his mind, and he couldn't get rid of it. It was like a heart demon that would always stay in his heart. Luffy was not afraid of life and death. The moment he went to sea, he had already put life and death aside. But for the life and death of his companions, he regarded it as important as Mount Tai and would never allow others to hurt them. Hey, fear like an ant, tremble. The man you are talking about, I have known and fought against him. When the awakened fishman along heard this, he immediately raised his head to the sky and laughed wildly. His unbridled laughter was filled with unprecedented pleasure, revealing his sharp and pointy teeth, and his voice carried a sharp roar. Luffy saw the mouthful of sharp teeth, his body couldn't help but tremble, his neck subconsciously shrank, and the tingling in his arm instantly eroded all over his body. Hee. You want to explore the new world with your current state? Stop daydreaming, you stupid pigs. The fishman along laughed wildly and taunted, venting the joy in his heart. Whiz! The Tachi was unsheathed, and a sharp cold light whistled out and instantly swallowed the fishman Arlong. Ka. Instantly, countless cold marks appeared on the surrounding walls. Tell me everything you know, or else. Zoro's eyes flashed with a cold light as he unsheathed his katana. The threat was self-evident. Now that they are pirates, it is necessary to inquire about the news of the marine, especially the information of the admiral. Although it is still far away for them, it is necessary to delve into it. Luffy also dropped the barbecue in his hand, which was a rare sight. The crowd gathered around Along and looked at him, clearly wanting him to explain everything clearly. Do you think I'll submit just because of your murderous eyes? In your dreams? Blue veins appeared on his blue face as Along's face was full of ridicule and disdain. These little brats actually wanted to threaten him. It was simply a fool's dream. Then he looked at the few of them, his eyes glowing with a green light as if he was going to devour them. Suddenly he changed the topic. But since you want to know, I don't mind fulfilling your wishes. Letting you damned humans live in fear every day is also a form of revenge in disguise. Kikik. Sanji's face turned cold when he heard this and his right foot rose from the ground. When he was about to teach him a lesson, Zoro pulled Sanji's body and shook his head to indicate that there was no need to act rashly. It would be too ungentlemanly to see a stray dog. The man you're talking about. With a gloomy face, the fishman Arlong remembered the time when he invaded Mariehua, and couldn't help but shudder. After taking a deep breath, he said in a deep voice, That man is an invincible demon. The fishman Arlong said coldly. In the past, Jinbe, Fisher Tiger, and Little Hachi were all annihilated by Dustless's overwhelming strength. The overwhelming power made them unable to retaliate at all. They were like clowns who were being toyed with wantonly. If you are targeted by him, I'm afraid your good days will come to an end, haha. Arlong laughed heartily, and in order to continue to add pressure to Luffy and others, he continued. His strength is beyond your imagination, Admiral? That's just his strength on the surface. I've personally seen how terrifying he is. That man punched and kicked the retired General Z, until he was bleeding profusely. The fishman Arlong relentlessly put pressure on Luffy and others. As long as Luffy and others can live in fear, he will be satisfied. Wiz, how is it possible? How can he be so strong? Sanji sucked in a breath of cold air and said incredulously. I heard that Z was a former Marine Admiral. His strength is beyond imagination. He once fought with One Piece Roger. If you talk nonsense again, I will kick your head off. Sanji warned fiercely, instinctively thinking that the fishman Arlong was talking nonsense. His sensei Redfoot Zeph had been in the New World before. Although he was just an unknown pirate, Redfoot Zeph was very clear about the New World. Fart, I saw all this with my own eyes. Lying to you? Who do you think you are? Looking at Sanji, the fishman Arlong said disdainfully, this group of guys really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. They think that they can do whatever they want with some strength. East Blue may be invincible, but looking at the whole New World, they may not even be cannon fodder for those great pirates. It's ridiculous to think that they are invincible with a mere 30 million berries bounty. Zoro and Sanji and others looked at each other. The fishman Arlong was obviously not lying. The fear and panic that went deep into his bones could not be faked at will. And the fishman Arlong has no need to deceive them. Chapter 688. The fishman Arlong laughed. Although he has been defeated and may end up in prison in the future, he was still happy to be able to mock and intimidate the Straw Hat Pirates. Do you think I'm exaggerating enough? The contemptuous smile on Arlong's face became clearer, and he didn't hide it. He said coldly, I can tell you clearly that man is beyond your imagination. You know what will happen if you are targeted by him. Over the years, the people who have been noticed by Dustless have all ended tragically. How can a nobody like you know so much? Nami asked the doubts in her heart. Since Wu Chen's strength was so strong, with the identity and strength of Arlong, it was impossible for him to appear in front of Wu Chen. Nobody. Hearing this, the fishman Arlong stared gloomily at Nami, then lowered his head and his eyes changed. He growled. Because he is the most noble and lawless group of people in the world. He is also the biggest garbage of human beings. He is the legendary world dash. Ah, I seem to hear you talking about me behind my back. Really, Arlong, you kid. I was kind enough to spare your life, but now you are talking bad about me. The strange voice spread like a ghost into everyone's ears. The sudden voice stopped the fishman Arlong from speaking. It's familiar. Luffy frowned. He always felt that the voice was familiar and subconsciously looked over. What are you doing here? You are not welcome here. Zoro was sweating, his nerves were tense, and his expression was cold as he ordered the expulsion order. The sharp sword in the scabbard was out of the scabbard, and he was on guard against the enemy. Such a nervous Sauron caused everyone to freeze. They all looked at the person who had suddenly stirred up the situation. Immediately, their eyes widened, and the fear in their eyes was clearly visible. The messy hair was messy, and the corners of his mouth outlined a faint smile. It was neither evil nor righteous, contradictory and strange. The man in front of them gave a very strange feeling. His face was kind, but there was an invisible ruthlessness. Although there was no breath leaking out, no one noticed when he appeared. Perhaps he had made up his mind to kill Luffy and the others. It's you. Seeing Dustless appear, Luffy showed a kind smile, and his careless appearance made Zoro, Sanji, and others speechless for a while. This guy doesn't seem to have figured out his position. You don't have to be so nervous. My mission is only to catch the fishman Arlong. You are not in the scope of my mission. Dustless's mouth raised a gentle smile, indicating that they did not need to worry. Your words won't work even if you try to fool a kid. Nami shouted coldly and glared at Dustless. He is telling the truth. You have to believe him. Luffy shouted and immediately jumped out to slap Nami's face. Hearing this, Nami stared at Luffy angrily. She thought that this kid's head was made of elm pimple. She thought that when a marine meets a pirate, there is only one end. Either you die or I live. Seriously. You're obviously asking for your own humiliation. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. He could clearly feel that several killing intents were locked on him, and Zoro, who was standing in place, had disappeared like a ghost. Suddenly, Dustless's line of sight suddenly darkened. Such a big sneak attack. You and Hawkeye are really far apart, Sorokoan. Raising his head and looking up at Zoro, who was falling from the sky, Dustless's mouth raised a contemptuous arc, and then he casually raised his thin right arm. What does he want to do? Sanji, Luffy, and others were puzzled and full of confusion. Clang! There was a ripple in the air, and Zoro's sharp sword mercilessly slashed at Dustless. Did he succeed? How is that possible? The joy on his face turned into dullness, and Zoro then roared out in disbelief. This strange scene, which should only be limited to mythological stories, happened in front of his eyes. Looking up, Dustless's face remained unchanged. He resisted Zoro's invincible attack with just one finger. It's just a casual and simple finger. Are you done dancing, boy? Her other hand quietly touched Zoro's face. Her white thumb closed, and then she flicked it out lightly. Bang! Boom boom boom. Zoro's face changed dramatically, and he spat out scarlet blood from his mouth. His body flew out like a cannonball, and there was a violent explosion. His body smashed several walls in succession. How can he be so strong? He defeated Zoro with just one finger. Is this guy really human? The fear in Nami's eyes was difficult to hide. Dustless's exaggerated offensive stunned all of them. Like Zoro, it was the first time they had seen such a situation in their lives. Bastard, you are not allowed to hurt my companions, otherwise, I will also hit you. Compared to the fearful Nami, Captain Luffy took a step forward and stared coldly at Dustless. He lowered the brim of his hat, and the cold light condensed in his eyes was particularly dazzling. Dustless hurt his companions at will, which has indirectly touched Luffy's bottom line. Hit me? I'm sorry, Luffy. With your current strength, it's impossible for you to send me flying. Looking at Luffy's cold eyes, Dustless smiled and said. This smile didn't matter, but in Luffy's eyes, it was a naked provocation, a declaration of war. The whole person disappeared in an instant, and only a black afterimage could be seen, rushing straight to Dustless, and a strong fist greeted Dustless with full strength. Chapter 689. Dustless had a helpless expression on his face, and he cursed Sengoku without hesitation. It was because of him that he was sent here to work hard. The reason was very simple. Capable people do more work. His speed is quite fast, but unfortunately, it's far from enough, and there are many flaws. Others may not see Luffy's figure, but Dustless can see it clearly. He can clearly see that Luffy is flying towards him in a straight trajectory. His whole body has changed strangely, and his arms are stretched without limit. Boom! The air suddenly trembled, and ripples visible to the naked eye spread out. Looking up, he saw Dustless casually grabbing Luffy's fist with one hand. His expression was indifferent and calm, as if he had done something insignificant. "You can catch me?" Luffy, who has always been energetic, couldn't help but look sluggish at this moment. The enemies he had encountered in the past, except for his grandfather, Garp, few people could do this. "Let me go." With a loud shout, Luffy began to struggle, twisting his body violently, trying to break free from Dustless's hands, and using all his strength to the limit. The idea is beautiful, but the reality is cruel. Dustless's hands seem to be connected to the earth, and it is impossible to break free easily. After a few breaths, Dustless didn't even move his feet. He stood quietly in the same place, letting Luffy struggle at will. His whole body was as stable as Mount Tai, and he couldn't be shaken. "Bastard, let go of Luffy. Don't underestimate people. We are the entire pirate group." An indignant and unhappy voice came from behind, and then an awe-inspiring hurricane suddenly came. Wuxia turned his head slightly, glanced at the golden-haired young man, and then turned his head again. As if he didn't exist, he ignored him directly. Looking closely, that figure is one of the three major forces of the Straw Hat Pirates, Sanji, who will be called Blackfoot in the future. "Let go of Luffy." Sanji's whole body rotated several times in succession, and his black iron-like toes rose from the ground, producing an unparalleled force under the high-speed rotation. Seeing Dustless unmoved, Sanji greeted him mercilessly. "Got it." The moment he touched the back of Dustless's head, Sanji was overjoyed. However, before he could be proud for long, a strange energy fluctuation erupted from Dustless's body. A strong repulsive force swept out along with a cold shout. "Shinra Tensei!" Bang! The unexpected Sanji was no exception. The repulsion eroded his body and his face suddenly became pale as snow, and he immediately flew backward like a kite with a broken string. Coincidentally, he suffered the same fate as Sauron, and was easily sent flying. After smashing through several walls, he fell into the ruins, his life or death unknown. "Bastard! What did you do to Zoro and Sanji?" Seeing that his teammates were easily killed, Luffy roared loudly. His eyes were bloodshot, and Luffy's breathing was abnormally heavy. He gasped and stared at Dustless ferociously. He wanted to tear him into pieces. "Don't worry, it's just a skin injury. Their physique is very strong and they won't die. Of course, your ability to choose teammates is also unexpectedly strong." Dustless explained softly, his tone was somewhat surprised. As everyone knows, Luffy is a person with a lot of nerves. To put it nicely, he is simple and naive. To put it bluntly, he is an idiot. But his ability to choose teammates is not to be underestimated. In the future, every character of the Straw Hat Pirates will have a high bounty, and even the bounty of all the members will exceed 1.5 billion berries. Whiz! A sharp sound came from the front, and an arm that extended without limit smashed into his face. "This time, I will definitely hit this bastard." Luffy's face was full of hope. Dustless lowered his head, and seemed to be thinking about something. He didn't pay attention to the incoming rubber fist. What surprised Luffy was that the moment he attacked Dustless, he suddenly turned his head, and easily avoided the attack. How is this possible? Does this guy have eyes on his head? Nami exclaimed in disbelief. She had seen Wu Chen's every move. Luffy's face was also full of astonishment. His optimistic state of mind couldn't help but be a little frustrated. Dustless remained calm from the beginning to the end. That tranquil gaze silently told him that everything was under control. "You are far from your father, Luffy." Dustless's eyes rippled, and his tone was full of disappointment. The current Luffy is just a small character. Dustless tried to make himself interested in Luffy, but he couldn't do it. He is too weak, more fragile than any enemy Dustless has fought before. "You know my grandfather and my father?" When mentioning the word father, Luffy's tone was obviously trembling and hopeful. He hasn't seen his father yet, he hasn't even seen him, and he doesn't even know what he looks like. I don't just know them, but I have a deep relationship with them. Dustless whispered, thinking of the figures of Durag and Garp in his mind. If their strength is calculated in terms of berries, their bounty is at least 800 or 900 million berries. This is also Dustless's personal guess. Today the Yonko 4 emperors, Bigga's mom has a bounty of 850 million berries. The strength of Durag and Garp can compete with the Yonko 4 emperors. Even Garp's strength is far beyond this number. Although he is now old, his strength is still incredible. Hearing this, everyone on the scene couldn't help but take a breath and stared at Luffy in shock. They didn't expect this silly boy to have such a shocking family background. The strength of his father and grandfather has reached the level of 800 or 900 million bounty. For Nami and others, they are legendary figures. Chapter 690. Luffy's face was also dull. As if his soul had been extracted, his eyes were empty and blank, and his whole person fell into a sluggish state, no different from a sculpture. Obviously, he was also shocked by his deceitful grandfather, and the father he had never met before. This is a diversion, deliberately making us take it lightly, don't be fooled. Zoro, who stood up from the ruins, shouted. His eyes were staring at Dustless, and the 3 swords that were out of their sheaths reflected an invincible sharpness. Looking at the cold gleaming Tachi, there was a burning tingling sensation in his eyes. Make you take it lightly? Hearing this, a sneer appeared on Wu Chen's unchanging face. He said disdainfully, for adults, killing a baby in swaddling clothes is as simple as eating and drinking water. Do you think you can take it lightly? Boring. Zoro's face was even colder. Boom boom boom. There was an explosion in midair, and then Sanji broke out of the ground, and was attacked by the Shinra Tensei. He was obviously more embarrassed than Zoro, and holes in his bright clothes were everywhere. Is this the strength of an admiral? It's really beyond imagination. Sanji's face was dignified, and even though he tried to suppress it, his whole body still trembled uncontrollably. It's not that he is afraid of Dustless. At the beginning of the road of sea pirates, he has already seen life and death. It's the silent oppression that seems to pierce his soul, and the shadow hidden in his heart can't be waved away. Being stared at by Dustless, even if it's just a casual glance, Sanji has a feeling of soul trembling. But even so, Sanji still refused to give up like a rock. Your problem pirate group is not strong, but everyone's tenacity cannot be underestimated. Dustless's tone was full of praise and admiration. The strength of these people is barely average, or even inferior, but everyone's tenacity and courage to fight and refuse to give up are admirable. Don't come over, I'm a rubber man, he can't hurt me, I'll deal with him. Seeing that Zoro and Sanji were about to join forces to attack Dustless again, Luffy quickly stopped them. He is a rubber man and pain is just a concept for him. From childhood to adulthood, for about 17 years, only Garp can make Luffy feel pain. Dustless's face gradually became cold, and his palm was replaced by black steel. His cold eyes looked at Luffy carefully, and immediately threw him out mercilessly. Boom boom. The ground couldn't withstand the erosion of the turbulent force, and a large pit appeared. Cough, it hurts. Unprecedented tingling like a tidal wave, and Luffy's face twitched. I'm a rubber man, how can I feel pain? Luffy's tone was filled with surprise and confusion. The only person who could cause him such pain was his grandfather Garp. Dustless was the second person in his life. Luffy's SSSSSSSSSS. Dustless explained. His voice was very soft, but it was so infectious that everyone could hear it clearly. Don't be fooled by him. He is deliberately attacking our confidence. Let's attack him together. Zoro quickly shouted. His tone was full of magic that was difficult to erase, instantly pulling everyone's mind back. Zoro and Sanji looked at each other, and immediately rushed towards Dustless. They used to fight one-on-one with others, but now they are facing a strong enemy beyond imagination, so naturally, they dare not be arrogant. They can only do their best to fight. Stupid. His eyes turned, and a circle of ripples spread out from his eyes. The repulsive force that broke out of his body was unstoppable, like the autumn wind sweeping the fallen leaves. This is a power without substance, and it can't be stopped at all. Shinra Tensei. The invisible repulsive force is almost invincible. Bang bang bang. Bang bang bang. With two loud noises in succession, Zoro and Sanji were forced back in an instant. Although they were prepared, they were easily defeated and their expressions were gloomy. No one else can get close to him. Is there any need for this duel to go on? Wanxiang Tianyin. While the two were contemplating, a gravitational force locked them, and their bodies drifted uncontrollably towards Dustless. Seeing this, Zoro's face turned cold, and a cold aura hung on his face. He raised his sword that was sharp enough to cut steel, and with the pull of gravity, the white slash went straight towards Dustless. How many times do I have to say it before you understand? Are you so stubborn that you can't recognize reality? The sharp slash cut through the ground, leaving an indelible mark, crossing layers of space, and swallowing Dustless, annihilating him in an instant. In the battle between the strong, it is always those who will not make a sound that will be affected. This kind of fragile attack is useless. Dustless raised his hand, and at the moment of contact, he suddenly shot towards the slash with one hand, and the destructive force directly scattered the slash. This is the strength of an admiral. How did he train his body? Zoro swallowed his saliva, and said with a trembling voice. His tone was filled with horror. This was the first time he understood the horror of an admiral. He didn't expect the reality to be so absurd and cruel. This was not a battle at all, but an adult playing with a child. There was no comparison between the two sides. Zoro's heart was dead. Dustless only used the power of one hand to easily disperse his strongest slash. This is not a gap in strength. The gap in strength can be made up by teamwork and the number of people. The gap in dimensions is useless no matter how hard they try. Chapter 691. Dustless immediately frowned as if he had noticed something. His eyes were as sharp as a knife, and a cold killing intent emerged between his eyebrows. He stared at Along, who had already untied the rope, and his killing intent turned into a solid heartbeat. His whole body turned into countless photons and immediately whizzed out. I'm right in front of you, and you still want to run away? The photons condensed in front of Along and turned into Dustless's figure. His eyes were filled with endless indifference. I met you 10 years ago. At that time, you were the same as now. You didn't make any progress. Shut up, mere human. Fear and panic emerged in Along's ferocious eyes. He recalled Dustless's cruel means after capturing the enemy. Hesitation flashed through his eyes, and his fangs, which were far denser than a shark's, bit toward Dustless's head. These sharp saw-like teeth were enough to easily bite through steel. Its power was infinite. You today are still the same as you were 10 years ago. The result is destined to be the same as 10 years ago. Dustless announced softly, indifferently judging Along's ending. Photons floated on the tip of his foot. In just a blink of an eye, countless rays of light gathered and dyed Dustless's entire calf golden. The condensed force was enough to easily destroy a mountain. Light speed kick. A straight light beam shot out from the leg and instantly wrapped Along's whole body. The earth suddenly trembled. Boom boom boom. The sound of explosions rang out, and a super-large scale of fire rose into the air. The temperature increased by 100 times in a flash, and the steel bars used to build houses were melted into water. Along, who was in the deep pit, had a tactful luster in his eyes, and his whole body was filled with a burnt smell. In this life, you can't appear here anymore. Glancing at him, Dustless walked straight toward the Straw Hat group of 4. 3 Sword Stream, 1080 Trouble Phoenix. The powerful slash shot out and hit Dustless in an instant, but the effect was negligible. Dustless, who was bathed in the slash, looked as if nothing had happened, and walked out with an indifferent expression. 10,000 Mammoth Heavenly Attraction. The sudden gravitational force locked onto Zoro, and his body flew uncontrollably towards Dustless. Bastard, it's this move again. Zoro struggled with all his might, but to no avail. He roared unwillingly. He was not a kind-hearted person, and all 3 blades flashed with cold light as they slashed towards Dustless. Naive. Seeing this, Dustless only smiled. He gently lifted his thumb and a light gathered at his fingertip. Although it was very weak, it revealed a sharp light that could penetrate everything. Lasers. The golden light whizzed out in a straight line. It was unstoppable. Poochie. Zoro suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest, and he lost all his strength. He couldn't help but loosen his grip on his swords, and his expression turned ugly. Looking closely, he saw a burnt bloody hole in his abdomen, which was obviously caused just now, and the wound was still smoking. In this case, no matter how strong your vitality is, you will lose your combat power. At best, you can only linger on. To be honest, I have fought with as many pirates as there are grains of sand in the Ganges. Pirates like you who have tenacity and refuse to admit defeat are rare. If you have enough time to grow, you will definitely become strong. Dustless said firmly. Although these people are currently immature fledglings, their strong hearts have already made small achievements, but they lack tempering. So you came to kill us in advance. Marines are really despicable. Zoro tried his best to satirize. Zoro was like a candle in the wind, and the weak candlelight would be extinguished at any time. Boom. After a few breaths, Zoro finally couldn't support himself and fell to the ground, and his forehead was sweating uncontrollably. Green algae head. You bastard. Seeing that Zoro had lost his movement, Sanji's eyes cracked, and he turned into a storm, and his right calf gathered a majestic force that was enough to easily crush a building. On the surface, he and Zoro were very incompatible, but they cherished each other very much. You don't have a good memory at all. The powerful calf penetrated Dustless's body, and to Sanji's disbelief, Dustless's whole body was covered in bright photons, and he easily ignored his attack. How is this possible? How can you ignore my attack? Sanji's tone was full of surprise. It was the first time he had seen such a thing. The Marine Admiral in front of him was too evil. What is this trick? Is he also a ninja? He is different from Luffy and that clown buggy. Thinking of the clown buggy he met a while ago, Sanji's brain stopped thinking for a short time. I am the shining man who ate the shining fruit. My body can be naturalized, and only people with haki can touch my strength. Of course, some weird devil fruit users can also do it. Dustless explained in a low voice. Just like the dark fruit, even if the host itself does not have haki, it can attack the devil fruit users. In addition, the same is true for the surgeon fruit. If you are done attacking, then it's my turn. His plain eyes were incomparably awe-inspiring, shooting out a cold chill. Dustless's whole body erupted with an unimaginable oppressive momentum, and the same move as the previous attack on Fishman Arlong. His calf turned golden in an instant. Unexpectedly, they were hit by the light head-on. Light speed kick. As Dustless' voice fell, the whole ground trembled violently and burst open like paper scraps. The charred Sanji could not move and had lost his will. You're the only one left, Luffy. And don't stare at me so ferociously. Turning his head, Dustless saw Luffy looking at him unkindly. He smiled in relief. I made you realize your own weakness and see your own limits. Therefore, you can train desperately without thinking about your own safety. You should thank me. Chapter 692. Luffy glared furiously, his little face twisting violently. It was even to the extent that due to his excessive rage, his entire body was like the crater of a volcano that had gone berserk. His entire body was suffused with an indescribable blazing heat that intended to incinerate everything into nothingness. You are asking for trouble. I said that the target was not your pirate group, but you didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The strength of an admiral is not something you can touch now. Dustless made an indifferent look. He said that he came because of Arlong. But you hurt my companions. Luffy didn't appreciate it. Dustless had hit Sanji and Zoro in succession, which had already touched his bottom line. He valued the safety of his companions more than his own life. So what, as a Marine, it's already a great gift not to kill them. Dustless didn't care and his tone was somewhat magnanimous. The pirates they encountered in the past were just a face-to-face encounter, and their bodies were separated from their bodies. Although Sanji and Zoro were seriously injured and had fainted, they were still able to save their lives, which was already a special treatment for them. You really don't know what to do. Seeing Luffy's eyes become more piercing, Dustless knew that his previous muscle show was in vain, and he couldn't make this guy retreat. Not only that, but it also aroused the wildness in his heart. Luffy, the gap between us is too far. It's difficult to make up for the gap between us by pure passion. Dustless said lightly. Even if the crawling creatures on land had wings, they would not be able to touch the eagles that were flying, let alone fight them. Less nonsense. Luffy, who was angry, completely ignored the words and raised his palm to Dustless, his eyes as cold as ice. Although he is familiar with Dustless, Luffy will not let go of the person who hurts his companions. Rubber pistol. The extremely tough arm stretched without limit and almost instantly, it was close to Dustless and smashed towards his stomach. Bang. With a loud bang, a smile appeared on Luffy's small face. He was sure that he had hit Dustless. The soft feeling of a human's abdomen was not a lie. However, the Dustless in front of him was as calm as a breeze. I clearly hit him, so why does he still look like nothing happened? Luffy's face was sluggish, and his mind was blank. He had attacked with all his strength, but Dustless was unscathed. What a pity your strength is too weak. Dustless patted the corner of his wrinkled clothes, and said without a change in expression. Just as Luffy thought, his attack did hit Dustless, but it felt like a soft fist to Dustless. It felt like he was just scratching an itch. Not only did he not feel any pain, but it also made Dustless's body itch. The gap between them was too big, and the current Luffy was too weak. His strength was only at the level of a pirate with a bounty of 4,000 or 5,000 berries. Dustless felt bored when he thought about it. Rubber machine gun. The dense rain of bullets fell on Dustless and eroded his whole body, but Dustless still stood in the same place, and his feet never moved. He was as tall and majestic as Mount Tai. Not only did he not feel pain, but because of Luffy's attack, his slightly itchy body was extraordinarily comfortable for a moment. Hey, why did you suddenly stop? After a while, Dustless looked at Luffy, who was as tired as a dead dog with his tongue hanging down, and asked in disappointment. Then he looked up at the gray sky. The setting sun in the distance had gradually dimmed, and was about to sink into the sea. It was obviously not too late. It's time to end it. Retracting his gaze and staring at Luffy, Dustless's body turned into lightning and swept out. Because the speed of light was too terrifying, Dustless made a harsh roar every time he moved. That sharp whistling sound caused people to feel dizzy. In just the blink of an eye, Dustless descended from the sky, crossing layers of space and easily came to Luffy, grabbing Luffy's throat like a rabbit. In this way, you won't have the ability to fight back. Black skin gushed out of the slender little hand and instantly eroded the whole arm. Pain, 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 it hurts. Luffy struggled with all his might. He grabbed Dustless's right arm and punched with all his might. However, it was as if his fist was made of steel. It made a crisp sound of boom, boom, boom. From Dustless's indifferent face, it was not difficult to see that the effect was negligible. The attack covered with armament haki. Even if you are a rubber man, you will feel pain. Armament haki is the natural enemy of all ability users, and no ability user is an exception. And you are the same. No ability user of any system is immune to armament haki. Although Luffy is a rubber man, he will feel pain when attacked by armament haki. Let me go. Luffy gritted his teeth and roared. When Luffy was stuck like this, he realized that he was like a lonely boat in the ocean. There was no need for stormy waves. Just a trivial breeze could easily overturn him. An unprecedented unwillingness poured into his heart. His eyes locked on Dustless. Strong resentment broke out of his body, and the appearance of killing intent was particularly strange. Don't make such a scary expression. It will only make you more powerless. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. He had seen too many of this kind of protesting and unwilling eyes. It was tantamount to a fantasy to change the reality of a fiasco. Let go of Luffy. The sluggish Nami picked up the rusty steel pipe and ran toward Dustless. The fear in her eyes was clear, but her face was firm. Chapter 693. Looking at the rampaging Nami with interest, Dustless couldn't help but look at her in a new light. The fear in her eyes was clearly visible, but she still rushed over without hesitation. In the past, Nami was always evading and escaping from reality. Now her performance made people's eyes light up. Although this performance was extremely brainless in Wu Chen's eyes, it could be seen that she still cherished her companions. His eyebrows were slightly raised, and a ripple visible to the naked eye spread out. This magical energy is boundless, spreading rapidly. There is no boundary. It is mysterious and has no substance, but it is real. With Wu Chen as the center, it spreads around and easily covers and swallows Nami, who is unaware of it. In the face of Haushika Haki, these young chicks couldn't fight back at all. Nami's hair stood up, and she looked at the expressionless Dustless with a slightly dazed look in horror. She instinctively retreated, and some mysterious unknown force invaded her mind. Her spiritual world seemed to be struck by lightning, and she lost her mind for a moment. Her body swayed from side to side in a daze, like a candle in the wind, and she lost control. "What did you do to Nami, you bastard?" Luffy, who realized something was wrong, asked anxiously. "Don't worry, she was just stunned by Haki." With his hands in each other's sleeves, Dustless explained. "My partner was beaten to a pulp. I just thought it would be better if she didn't see it, so as not to leave a psychological shadow. I am the only one in the marine so far." Dustless smiled, and his tone was half joking and half serious. "And her vitality is really strong, but you should be like her, lying on the ground and sleeping is more appropriate." Turning his head, Dustless noticed that Zoro and Sanji showed signs of recovery, and the same throbbing appeared in his eyes again. A ripple visible to the naked eye, but a mysterious energy fluctuation that could not be touched spread. The two people who were affected by it trembled and fainted again. This mysterious power was domineering and awe-inspiring. Just touching it would cause one's soul to tremble. Luffy looked at the scene in front of him with a dumbfounded expression. He raised his arm subconsciously, and could clearly see the hair on the surface of his skin trembling uncontrollably. He knew that this was the case when Dustless deliberately let him go. Otherwise he may end up like Zoro, Sanji, and others. 10,000 Mammoth Heavenly Attraction. With a shout, a formless ripple enveloped Luffy. He was startled to find that he had lost his balance and was sent flying. He looked up and saw that a black hole had appeared in Dustless's palm. Rubber pistol. With the help of gravity, Luffy's arm elongated without limit, and almost instantly smashed into Dustless's face. "Damn it, it hurts, it hurts." Looking in the direction of the sound, the one who cried out in pain was not Dustless, but Luffy. "It is said that armament Haki is the natural enemy of your ability. It seems that you still don't understand what it means." Dustless felt helpless towards Luffy's one-track mind. Only he was so eccentric. Light speed kick. The moment Luffy approached Dustless, the flash of light burst out all over his body, and the fierce beam of destruction eroded and swallowed him. Boom boom boom. Flames soared into the air, the ground trembled, and a large pit was clearly visible. Luffy was lying in it, his eyes were white, and he had lost his fighting consciousness. Undead Cockroach finally lay down. Dustless breathed a sigh of relief. With his palm facing the direction of Arlong, his body suddenly ignored the existence of gravity and floated strangely towards Dustless. Just as he was about to pull away, Straw Hat Luffy stood up and slapped his face again. "This guy. I have to beat him until he only has half a life left." Dustless was extremely speechless. He glanced at Luffy behind him from the corner of his eyes and couldn't help but sigh. In the next second, his whole body turned into an afterimage and lost its texture. Boom. The fist covered with armament Haki mercilessly smashed into Luffy's lungs, and the force was fierce and strong. Puff! Suffering a fatal blow, Luffy's pupils widened, and his body couldn't help but step back a few steps in succession. His chest was surging and rolling, and white saliva was uncontrollably spat out. Finally, he couldn't bear the burden and knelt on the ground, his hands supporting the ground, not letting himself kneel again. "Your courage is commendable." Dustless nodded and praised, and sincerely admired Luffy's amazing willpower. Then he looked cold and said indifferently, "But the behavior is really stupid." After that, Dustless kicked out ruthlessly. Boom boom boom, reaching Dustless's world-shocking realm. Even the slightest attack would cause an unimaginable commotion and destruction. However, this kick was not covered with armament hockey. Otherwise, Luffy might have fallen. Why didn't you catch me? Dustless passed by Luffy and used the last of his strength to open his eyes. Luffy's tone was like a man in his twilight years, revealing the exhaustion deep into his soul. Do you think you have the value of being caught by me? Dustless didn't answer and asked. So that's how it is. Maybe it's not worth enough. Luffy laughed at himself. His eyes restored light, and it seemed that he wanted to remember Dustless's face forever, and keep it in his heart. His mouth squirmed, and he wanted to speak again, but his bad physical condition made him swallow back his words. So live well, your future performance is worth looking forward to. Glancing at Luffy, Dustless's body turned into a gust of wind, and with the complete sunset of the sun, he disappeared into the dark night sky. Killing Luffy is worthless, but letting him live can better disturb the world. The more chaotic it is, the more thoroughly Dustless can take the opportunity to fish in troubled waters. He and the world government and the Marine headquarters are all seemingly united, but at the same time, they are all different. Chapter 694. Dustless looked at the fainted Straw Hat Pirates with a smile on his face. Only by giving these kids pressure can they feel the pressure, so they can work harder to enhance their strength, and have stronger strength to help Dustless destroy the world. Staring at Luffy's sleeping face, Dustless couldn't help but feel a little sympathy for him. First, he was used by Shanks to defeat himself, and then he was used by Dustless to destroy the world. This is the sorrow of ants. They can only go with the flow, and they don't even have the qualifications to know the truth. A few days later, on the blue sea, Dustless walked alone. The shadow in the distance was clearly visible, and the tall building rose from the ground, like a pole gun standing on the sea, extraordinarily spectacular and majestic. Looking closely, it is Impel Down. Your luck is really good. You entered Impel Down several times, and finally you were released. Dustless stared at the floating fishman Arlong. This guy was locked in Impel Down before, but he was bailed out because Jinbe joined the 7 warlords of the sea, and his life was quite happy. With the support of the 7 warlords of the sea, it was enough for him to be lawless. Hey, this time I will be released again, haha. The fishman Arlong laughed wildly. In his early years he had joined the Sun Pirates, so he had a close relationship with the Knight of the Sea Jinbe. When Fisher Tiger invaded Mariehua to release slaves, the fishman Arlong was arrested by Dustless and joined Impel Down. But later he was bailed out because Jinbe joined the 7 warlords of the sea. This time you will never be released. Glancing faintly at the merman Along, who was full of smiles, Wu Chen's tone was resolute and decisive. Why? Hearing this, the fishman Arlong was stunned and immediately asked, puzzled. Why? The reason is very simple. Staring at the sky in the distance, Dustless whispered. There is no extra reason, just because you were caught by me. Is this explanation enough? His calm face remained as calm as an ancient well. He was like a stone, without any extra expression. Well, I have a backer. I'm different from the pirates you caught before. Arlong roared loudly, his tone full of confidence. There are only 2 endings for pirates caught by Dustless. One is to be killed on the spot, and the other is to be locked in the dark Impel Down forever. But he is different. Jinbe boss will definitely bail me out. Arlong raised his head and proudly promised Dustless. Hearing this, Dustless looked at the fishman Arlong and his eyes flashed with disapproval. As a Shichibukai, Jinbe can bail out many pirates, but if he wants to release the pirates caught by Dustless, it is tantamount to daydreaming. Shichibukai. A special ability only works on ordinary people. Sorry, I'm not within their rules, and their child's privilege can't bind me. Dustless replied with a blank expression, and his tone was unshakable. Even if Jinbe was able to bail out the fishman Arlong, it was also the result of Dustless's nod. Otherwise, the fishman Arlong's head would have been removed. Then with a wave of his finger, the tied fishman Arlong floated up. On the endless sea, the 2 men walked together to Impel Down and soon disappeared into the clouds. As soon as he stepped into impel down, an uninvited guest with blue skin appeared in Dustless's pupils. Looking up, it was one of the Shichibukai, Knight of the Sea Jinbi. Oh, you're quite well informed. Looking at Jinbi, Dustless said. It was only a few days before and after the news. Jinbi had already known the news, and it was obvious that he had been waiting for a long time. Someone must have tipped him off. It's none of your business. With a snort, Jinbi said coldly. Looking at the fishman Arlong, who was scorched and full of various wounds, Jinbi's brow wrinkled tightly together, and his eyes flashed with displeasure and hostility. He immediately looked at Dustless, and the disgust in the depths of his eyes disappeared in a flash. The person he didn't want to see the most in his life was this guy, no one else. According to the agreement when I became the Shichibukai, I can bail out my men. Now I ask you to let him go. Arlong is my subordinate. Taking a deep breath, Jinbi shouted. If it wasn't for the situation, he really didn't want to deal with people like Dustless, ruthless, strong, and unfathomable. In all fairness, being in the same space with Dustless, Jinbi will feel a sense of oppression that he has never felt before, like an invisible heavy mountain. Let him go. I'm going to say no. Touching his chin, Dustless said playfully. Jinbi heard this. His breathing suddenly became heavy, and he stared at Dustless gloomily, and the murderous intent made the air around him begin to cool down. Filled with cold murderous intent, Dustless's expression remained unchanged, and he still looked at him playfully. If you want to take this kid by brute force, I advise you to save it. The gap between you and me. I think you should understand, Jinbi. His expression suddenly stiffened. Even if he was unwilling, Jinbi still loosened his fist. As Dustless said, the gap is too big, and it's tantamount to directly looking for death. This is the agreement between the government and the Shichibukai. I hope you don't breach it. Even so, he still refused to lower his posture, and took out the world government, hoping that Dustless would step back. Unfortunately, he was destined to be disappointed. Funny, Jinbi, don't you know who I am? You should have seen me in the past. To some extent, I can represent the government. Chapter 695. Jinbi felt deeply helpless. He didn't know where to start. Not only was there a huge gap in strength between them, but his identity was also exaggerated and shocking. The fishman has not even been recognized by the world government. It is a lower class of people. It is a creature with no human rights. Hey, don't forget the original government agreement. Even if I withdraw from the organization, you can't say anything. Jinbi threatened without showing weakness. It's just that Law is full of confidence in Dustless's eyes. Threatening me, hee. I like hard bones the most, Jinbi. Dustless, who was deeply bored, was interested in Jinbi's words, and there was a cynical smile on the corner of his mouth. In fact, you can withdraw from the organization. If you think the Fishman Island can afford this price, you can try. Dustless stared at Jinbi calmly, and he also threatened. How can you be so despicable? The anger in his eyes, Jinbi's fist was clenched again. He is also a veteran of the sea for many years. Naturally, he heard the meaning of Dustless's words. This is a disguised threat. Maybe as long as he withdraws from the Shichibukai, the entire Fishman Island will be devastated. You bastard are so shameless, Jinbi boss, kill him. The fishman Arlong was not an idiot and immediately shouted hysterically at Jinbi. Idiot, you haven't even read the situation. The cold eyes locked on the fishman Arlong. Dustless's eyes turned cold, and the strange energy fluctuations instantly swallowed the fishman Arlong. The pupils that were still shining suddenly turned, and then he fainted. What a superb Haushaku haki. Jinbi's face was ugly. This moment of Haushaku, even Jinbi was a little affected, and his whole body trembled uncontrollably. Even though he had been through hundreds of battles, he couldn't help but feel fear and panic in his heart. This profound Haushaku haki, he can only think of two people, Whitebeard and Red Hair Shanks. Perhaps these two legendary figures can barely compete with Dustless. Looking at Arlong, who was rolling his eyes on the ground, Jinbi's heart was filled with anger and his fists were clenched. Actually, I can also let him go. And at the same time, I can also let your fishman race live safely in the air. With my power and special status, I can do this. Of course, There is no free lunch in this world. All of these promises have conditions. Like a ray of light in the darkness, Dustless's words suddenly made Jinbi see hope again. Jinbi choked with sobs, and his eyes were obviously filled with desire. He knew that Dustless was telling the truth, and with his status, there was no need to lie to Jinbi. With Dustless's status, Dustless could easily do it. What are your conditions? Jinbei's hesitant eyes finally turned into determination, and his voice even trembled. This is very simple. It depends on how you choose. It's completely up to you, Jinbi. Dustless's face swept a mysterious smile, and then the corner of his mouth was close to Jinbi's ear. After a while, Jinbi's face changed greatly, and his hopeful look was replaced by anger and killing intent. He gasped for breath. He didn't expect Dustless's conditions to be so absurd. Are you kidding me? You want me to plot against Whitebeard's father? Jinbi shouted angrily, while suppressing the anger in his heart. His words were fierce, and he couldn't wait to tear Dustless into pieces, and then throw them into the sea to feed the fish. Dustless actually set such absurd conditions. Kidding? Of course I'm serious. Otherwise, what do you think you can get my bail without doing anything? You're too naive, Jinbi. Dustless heard this and said very seriously. Jinbi and Whitebeard's relationship is not shallow, even compared to the group of sons. If he attacks Whitebeard, the effect will be beyond imagination. Even if Whitebeard doesn't die, it won't be good. If I were you, I would agree to this condition. Whitebeard used to shelter the Fishman Island for other purposes. As a pirate, you must know how cunning Whitebeard is. This business is worth it. If you agree, the Fishman Island will be able to see the light of day again in the future. As for refusing, oh, you also understand. Dustless's mouth had a playful smile. Jinbi's pupils flickered, and he began to calculate the gains and losses in his heart, making a difficult choice. There is no doubt that as long as there is Dustless's approval, the fishmen can live a normal life like human beings in the future. They no longer have to live under the deep sea, and they will always be accompanied by darkness and coldness. However, Jinbi can't agree to Dustless's conditions. No matter what the purpose is, Dustless has sheltered the Fishman Island for several years. This is a fact. Sorry, I refuse your conditions. With a cold look, Jinbi decisively refused Dustless. Staring at Dustless's eyes, Jinbi said without fear, I can't do such a crazy thing. Even if you hold a knife on my neck, I can't raise a butcher's knife to Whitebeard. Jinbi said in a righteous tone, his voice filled with determination, and without regret. No, you're wrong, Jinbi, you will agree. Dustless's face was full of darkness, and his eyes were full of strange black light, which was frightening. The flames burning in his eyes were enough to swallow and burn the whole world. No matter who it is, they can't escape the control of Dustless. Your 7 warlords of the sea can appear. This is an inevitable product under my control. In fact, it's just a chess piece that I took advantage of. Do you think you have the right to choose? Don't dream. From beginning to end, you are all chess pieces. Chapter 696. Jinbi's face was full of anger as he trembled with anger. Dustless's words seemed to be a silent statement. Their so-called shichibukai is just a bug that they play with at will without the slightest right to choose. They can only go with the flow, and will only be cruelly suppressed if they want to resist. I didn't intend to fight against the government, but you forced me to do this. Staring at Dustless fiercely, Jinbi couldn't stand it, and chose to resist by force. Dustless was so arrogant and unreasonable, and the cruel conditions made it difficult for him to accept. He suddenly felt that compared to Dustless, Sengoku and Marine Zakainu is too kind. Look at you, you want to fight. You should know the gap between us. Any resistance is useless. Dustless's eyebrows rose slightly, and he saw through Jinbi's intention. You and I have fought before and you know the result. Struggle is futile. Only if you agree to my conditions, the Fishman Island will be saved. You want me to attack Whitebeard-senpai? Dream on. Jinbi said decisively, his firm tone showed no regrets. Hearing this, Dustless's eyes gradually dimmed, and his expression became colder and colder. God sprinkles the rain of wisdom to the world, And you covered it with an umbrella. Idiot move. The moment his voice fell, Dustless rushed out like a storm, rolling up a burst of choking dust, and even because the speed was too fierce, it strangely brought a gust of wind. It came crashing down like crushing dry weeds. I'm not the same as I was before. Seeing Dustless rushing over so exaggeratedly, Jinbi also reacted immediately. It's not his style to wait for death, and a drop of water suddenly appeared in his hand. Drink. With a low shout from Jinbi, the tiny water droplet in his hand instantly magnified countless times and turned into a giant water ball, which looked quite powerful. Fishman empty-handed profound Takeshi. As Jinbi's voice fell, a strong shock wave came head-on, and the power was unimaginable, and even the soil buried deep in the ground was scraped out again. It's just an insignificant trick. What's the point? Seeing this, Dustless did not show any signs of slowing down. Instead, he increased his speed without limit. With a sharp whistling sound, he charged forward, completely ignoring the strong impact coming at him. Your trick can only tickle me, Jinbi. Your expression doesn't mean anything. Dustless frowned slightly and said with a slightly displeased tone. Following his line of sight, he saw Jinbi with a smug smile, giving people a feeling that his conspiracy had succeeded. You're just putting on an act. You're just a blockhead who won't cry until you see the coffin. Dustless's face was replaced by an awe-inspiring color. A shining light appeared in his hand, and the tip of his thumb pointed at Jinbi, and then condensed extremely dense photons. Lasers. The light beam shot out from Dustless's hand, and was about to swallow Jinbi, but he calmly avoided it. No wonder you're so confident. Over the years, your observation haki has improved a lot. It's estimated that your armament haki is also the same. Dustless nodded slightly, and then his eyes were replaced by ridicule. But what do you think is the use of armament haki and observation haki? In the face of absolute strength, no ability can play a role. My means to deal with you are not these. Jinbi shook his head resolutely, and his eyes glowed with a bright light. The thread of conversation suddenly turned, and Jinbi said, "This old man is a fishman, and you are a devil fruit user. This is your biggest disadvantage." Disadvantage? It seemed that he was shocked by the boring joke. Dustless's invincible offensive suddenly stopped and asked curiously, "You think you can defeat me just because you are a fishman? This is funny enough. Is it possible that you fishmen are the illegitimate children of the goddess of luck?" Dustless sneered. You'll understand what I mean immediately." After glancing at Dustless fiercely, Jinbi simply jumped into the sea and disappeared completely. The surface of the water only bubbled and disappeared. Dustless knew that Jinbi did not run away, but was brewing something on the bottom of the sea. The whole sea began to throb and tremble. I thought it would be some grand script. What's the use of such an old trick? There are always exceptions to everything. This trick might be fatal to other ability users, but it's useless to me. With a disappointed sigh, Dustless stood motionless, and he had already guessed what Jinbi's attack was. Boom! The sea trembled, and countless super-large water columns rose from the ground, condensing into a majestic water dragon that reached 10 or 20 meters high, which was quite scary. You are an ability user, no matter what type of ability you have. The sea is your natural enemy. Jinbi's voice was strong, and he roared as if victory was in his grasp. 2 words. Glancing at him, Dustless contemptuously said, "Idiot." Jinbi looked colder, and his big hand fell, and the roaring water column in the sky fell to the ground, and the clean land became a mess and turned into an endless sea. Are you kidding me? How can he be okay after being eroded by the sea? The relieved smile on the corner of his mouth stiffened, and Jinbi rubbed his eyes to make sure that he wasn't dizzy. Because he was too excited, his voice was as sharp as metal. This strange scene was unforgettable for Jinbi. Dustless not only didn't feel like he had met a natural enemy, but he was like a fish swimming in the sea, with a face full of comfort and enjoyment. What made Jinbi angry the most was that in the sea, Dustless elegantly swayed his body. His agile appearance was even more vigorous than that of a fishman. Chapter 697. Wuchen swam vigorously in the water. His elegant posture made Jinbi's old face twitch. In his heart he cursed. If it weren't for the years of suffering, his shrewdness would have been practiced to the point of perfection. Otherwise, he would have already spat out blood. Even so, Jinbi was still trembling. He felt darkness in front of him. The world in front of him was full of despair. Wu Chen's cheerful wandering posture was mocking his powerlessness in disguise. The trick he had painstakingly thought about for many years became a joke in an instant. Jinbi's inner thoughts were complex, and he had no words to express his bitterness. "Didn't I tell you before, Jinbi?" When Jinbi's old face was black, Dustless's voice suddenly sounded. The voice was very soft, and there was no ridicule in it. He said lightly, "Everything has an exception, and I am exactly that exception. Even if I have the devil fruit, I am immune to seawater. No, it stands to reason that I am immune to any ability in this world." The seawater that he painstakingly gathered dissipated, and Dustless also came into view. Jinbi's eyes widened, and he naively thought that Dustless would show signs of dehydration. Unfortunately, his wish was destined to fail. Dustless came into view. His face was rosy, his skin was clean and lustrous, and his clothes were dried. He looked healthy and lively. "I wanted to make you happy." "Oh, sorry, it seems that my humanized service has backfired," Dustless said helplessly. "I wanted to deliberately reveal a flaw to make you happy for a while. After all, it would be unfair for you to fight for so many years," Dustless said with a sincere face, but in Jinbi's eyes, it was particularly harsh. "If you can kill me in seconds, just do it. How is that possible?" Jinbi's sarcastic voice hasn't fallen yet when Dustless appeared in front of him like a shadow, ignoring the definition of the word distance. "Nothing is impossible. In your eyes, it's so close, but in my eyes, it's just close." The demonic whisper sounded in Jinbi's ears, and then he saw Dustless staring at him coldly. His leg condensed a dazzling light, and immediately whistled mercilessly. Light speed kick. Jinbi, who didn't have time to react, was directly swallowed by the golden light, setting off an endless explosion, and immediately followed by an endless impact, like a hurricane raging in the blink of an eye. The blazing heat waves were like the waves of the sea, spreading out in an unstoppable manner. Even the ground was scorched yellow and corroded beyond recognition. "Ah, you've learned a lot, Jinbi." His calm eyes spread some ripples. Dustless's tone had a little appreciation. Although Jinbi's body had been scorched by the high temperature caused by the lightspeed kick, he was still strong and straight like a javelin. "Didn't you want to kill me? It seems that you're going to be disappointed." Jinbi looked at him coldly and mocked him mercilessly. It seems that only in this way can he pick up his destroyed self-esteem. Worthy of being one of the 7 warlords of the sea, your strength is really extraordinary, Dustless said with a little emotion, and then the corner of his mouth swept into a smile. "Instant kill. If I let you fight directly, what fun would there be? In addition, you don't have to force yourself, you know your current physical condition, Jinbi." Looking at Jinbi's abdomen, there was a clear trace of depression, only a millimeter away from the position of the heart. As long as a little force is applied, Jinbi's heart will be hit hard. Obviously, Dustless did it deliberately. Even if the kick didn't kill him, Jinbi's body was trembling, like a willow branch in a storm, and the whole person felt particularly weak. "Don't talk nonsense." Hearing this, Jinbi directly refuted Dustless, and forcibly supported his body, and turned into a cannonball roaring out. When Dustless saw this, he looked indifferent, and his footsteps moved inch by inch. The speed was extremely fast, and Jinbi, who couldn't be seen by the naked eye, was clearly seen in his eyes. The power of the fishman is amazing, and Jinbi is no exception. The power condensed in his hand is enough to easily defeat a marine battleship. This kind of pure power attack, if you want to break my defense, it's 1,000 miles away. With both hands hugging the sky, ripples appeared in the bottom of his eyes. Wu Chen's dry lips opened slightly. "Shinra Tensei." The moment Jinbi touched Dustless, the irresistible repulsion came head-on. His face suddenly changed. Being blocked by this tyrannical force, Jinbi instantly flew out powerlessly. The small mountain in the distance also trembled. "Your efforts to never give up are commendable, But don't you think it's stupid and ridiculous to think that you can transcend the mortal world with your efforts, Jinbi? As Wu Chen's voice fell, he turned into a gust of wind and drifted out rapidly. In the void, the looming figure was mysterious. It was obviously close at hand, but it gave people a feeling that it was far away and untouchable. In the blink of an eye, he fell beside Jinbi. "Let me go." Jinbi struggled and used all his strength to shake his body, trying to break free from the shackles of Wu Chen. Looking at him, he has been choked by Wu Chen's throat and was lifted in the air without any power to fight back. Jinbi's face was full of shame, and he stared at Dustless with indignant eyes. His eyes were as sharp as a knife, enough to cut people into pieces. "Don't stare at me so fiercely. I gave you a chance to choose before, but you abandoned it. What? Do you want to go back on your words now?" Wu Chen said with an expression that had nothing to do with him. "How about, now are you tempted by my conditions? Go assassinate that old guy Whitebeard, and if you succeed, you and the Fishman Island will live comfortably in the future." Chapter 698. At night, because everyone had played to their heart's content during the day, it was very quiet at night. Dustless couldn't sleep. After eating the octopus, he was very excited. At this time, he sat on the beach and looked at the full moon. He couldn't help but feel a little distressed. At this time, he heard a familiar mature voice behind him. "Hey, don't you need to sleep?" Jieda came to his side, and a hint of a smile appeared in his eyes. After Dustless heard this, he snorted, rolled his eyes, and said with a speechless face, "Aren't you also not sleeping? You should be thinking about how to go down, right?" Yi Jiansuk nodded and scratched his head in distress. He sighed helplessly and said, "Yeah, this damned place is really hard to get down. We need to make a barrier so that everyone can get down." After Dustless heard this, he said, "That's not a problem, but it's not necessarily a problem for me to go down alone." Yi Jinjie said. Yi Jinjie was speechless. He rolled his eyes and said, "Isn't this guy's words the same as if he didn't say anything? You guy." As soon as he said this, he heard a voice immediately after, only to hear a girl's voice. "Maybe I can do it." After the words were said, Noelle, who didn't show up much, came to the side of the two wearing a beautiful and slightly reserved swimsuit and a jacket. Noelle's face was slightly red, then she looked at the two's eyes, snorted, turned her head and said, "Don't think too much, I'm only helping you for the mission, you lowly people." She was embarrassed when she said this. Immediately, the two of them burst out laughing. Then Noelle whispered, "It's not a problem if you want to go down, but give me 2 days to practice. I haven't tried to maintain it for so long." As soon as she said this, Dustless snorted and said, "Try to speed it up. If you can do it in 1 night, then do it. I'm going back to sleep." After saying this, he yawned and left. Noelle also knew that her master was impatient, so she was a little distressed. How could 1 night be enough? How could she maintain it for so long? It shouldn't be possible, right? At this time, she hurriedly said to her leader, Yi Jinjie, "Leader, how can 1 night of practice be enough? This won't work." Yi Jinjie yawned and scratched his head helplessly, then said, "Okay, you can do it, I'm going back to sleep." After he finished speaking, he let out a hearty laugh and turned around to leave. Noelle suddenly felt a little speechless. This guy was really, with this thought in mind, he slowly stood up and walked towards a pile of rocks. It was quieter and it was more suitable for using magic. Yi Jinjie, Jinjie's S. After saying this, she quickly took out her magic book and said, "Come, water flow, water creation magic. Poseidon's water ball." After saying this, she immediately created a huge water ball. In front of her, her face immediately showed an excited expression. It was really great, she actually succeeded for the first time. At this time. But only a voice was heard. "Noelle, you're here too." Just as he finished speaking, a strong young man, dragging a huge sword, came to Noelle's side. That was Ashta. Ashta came to Noelle's side, his face full of smiles. At this time, Noelle's face turned red and suddenly, her magic dissipated, causing the water ball to scatter on the ground. She immediately turned her head and said in a panic, "What are you doing here? Didn't you go back to sleep?" Ashta quickly said, "Ah no, I didn't go back to sleep. I'm still here training. Although that thing is really delicious, I think I must strengthen my training. Otherwise, how can it work?" After hearing this, Noel nodded in a daze, took a deep breath, and said, "I haven't been able to completely maintain the magic in my body." Just as he finished speaking, Asta immediately said, "Is that so? Why don't you try to relax a little more?" As soon as he said this, Noel's eyes were filled with doubt. She sighed and said, "Well, I don't think it'll work." But at this time, Ashta looked at Noel seriously and said, "No, you can do it. I believe that with your talent and magic power, you can do it. You can do it better than me. Look at me. A guy without magic power can become like this." After Noel heard this, he was stunned. There was a hint of surprise in his eyes. He took a deep breath and said, "So it's like this. I'll work hard." After saying this, she suddenly showed a serious expression. Then he started to practice very hard. Ashta held an arrow and comprehended his swordsmanship. He knew that what he learned was not enough. He knew that the swordsmanship he displayed last time was far from enough. He was not strong enough. He deeply understood that in his heart, and he was far from being able to fully control his own power. Therefore, at this moment, he began to train even harder. Under the moonlight, a pair of people were training hard. Wuchen looked at all this from the side, and felt a little gratified in his heart. These two guys had quite a tacit understanding. Thinking like this, he finally yawned and turned his head to sleep very sleepily. Just as he was about to go into sleep, he heard a voice. "Hey!" Wuchen looked up and saw Banasha, who was lying on the side. He blinked in a daze, the corner of his mouth slightly outlined, and said, "Oh, you're not asleep yet?" Banasha snorted, her face slightly blushed, and said, "By the way, where did you go?" Dustless saw this woman's appearance and was stunned. He blinked his eyes. It was very strange. Chapter 699. At this point in the battle, Jinbi couldn't help but become angry. His face was red and his neck was thick. It's not that he's a stingy person, but Dustless is really hateful. Not to mention, the foul language in his mouth makes people furious. Jinbi thought that his tolerance is comparable to the sea, but at this moment, he was still annoyed by Dustless. His lungs were trembling. Jinbi even felt that his lungs were about to explode. "Ah, I'm telling the truth. You look so scary, no one wants you. I'm afraid that even the Sea King may not dare to eat you, Jinbi," Dustless said very seriously. In the eyes of human beings, Jinbi is indeed not flattering. Die for this old man. Jinbi couldn't bear the ridicule, not because he's too narrow-minded, but because this guy in front of him is too hateful, specifically sprinkling salt on people's wounds. Water strike. Jinbi didn't talk nonsense. He waved his hand and condensed a few drops of strange water balls, completely ignoring the existence of gravity, so strangely attached in front of him. This is one of the powerful tricks unique to the fishman race. This seemingly ordinary raindrop is actually very powerful. This kind of child's trick doesn't work on me, Jinbi. His eyes rotated rapidly, and Wu Chen's eyes suddenly turned into 3 Tomo Sharingan. Extremely strange, as deep and beautiful as a blood-red gem. The ripples in his eyes were like the ripples spreading on the surface of the water. With unimaginable power, in an instant, time and space seemed to be distorted by those strange eyes. The world in front of him seemed to be a mirror. The indescribable deep evil energy fluctuations made Jinbi's hair stand up. His whole soul was pierced. Whoosh, throwing the fear and trembling in his heart. Jinbi swept out the water drops in his hand. With infinite power, the speed was as fast as lightning. It was difficult to catch the trajectory of the movement with the naked eye. Bang bang bang. It seems that God suddenly stood on Jinbi's side. These powerful water drops all strangely hit Dustless's abdomen, smashing him out. Jinbi saw this scene and suddenly froze. To be honest, he just wanted to delay Dustless's attack. He didn't want to rely on this trivial trick to repel him. Jinbi's eyes were filled with awe. After many years of fighting, Jinbi knew that this opportunity will not come again. And Dustless's dark red blood stains on the corner of his mouth were obviously not pretending. It's just the result of Dustless's carelessness. Jinbee's body speed was raised to the limit. In just a short moment, Jinbee, like lightning, came in front of Dustless. His eyes were full of killing intent. Remembering the cruel treatment of Dustless, Jinbee's eyes turned scarlet, his arms and his hand into a fist. His strong muscles contained explosive power. Sharkwa's fist. The powerful fist, which was enough to destroy a small mountain, blasted toward Wu Chen's head without mercy. The ground, which couldn't bear this ferocious force, burst open in an instant, as fragile as paper scraps. Dustless's eyes turned white. Obviously, Jinbee's heavy blow had made him unconscious. However, this was just the beginning. Jinbee was not going to give up on such a rare opportunity. At the very least, he had to recoup all the suffering he had suffered before with interest. 7,000-watt roundhouse kick. His strong and powerful arm pulled Dustless up. Jinbee didn't intend to settle things peacefully. His hatred for Dustless was far more than that. 10 years ago, when invading Mariehua, he and his beloved big brother, Fisher Tiger, were crushed by Dustless with overwhelming strength. Now he wanted to take it back. Boom boom boom. With a powerful kick, Dustless flew out like a cannonball. A long and narrow ditch was formed on the ground, extending hundreds of meters away. Dustless was lying in the ditch weakly. "I'm not done yet." Seeing this, Jinbee smiled cruelly, showing a bloodthirsty face. From beginning to end, he was a pirate. His tiger body suddenly shook, and countless water droplets flowed out of his body and condensed in his palm. Unlike the previous water attack, this time it turned into an unprecedented big water ball. Fishman empty-handed's profound Takeshi. With Jinbee's order, this huge and exaggerated water ball turned into an endless impact, which was not much different from a light wave without a physical body, and it swallowed Dustless in an instant. The dust on the surface of the ground was blown away by this impact, and fresh soil buried deep in the ground was simply exposed to the sun. On the other hand, Dustless was already bloody. This should be the end. Seeing that Dustless was not breathing, Jinbee wiped the sweat from his ears and breathed a sigh of relief. However, at this moment, a sudden change occurred. Jinbee's spirit was in a trance, and the scene in front of his eyes was violently distorted, as if time and space were flowing backward, and he returned to the beginning. Dustless stood with his hands behind his back, and the corner of his mouth always had a calm smile. And the first impression he gave was elegant and indifferent. How is it possible? Was everything just a dream? Jinbee rubbed his eyes, and he couldn't believe it. She glared at Wu Chen. Wu Chen was in perfect condition. His skin was clean and his clothes were intact. On the contrary, he was even flatter than her. Her spirit suffered an unprecedented blow. Unable to bear the burden, she fell to the ground. She didn't even have the strength to move her body. "What you saw before was indeed a dream. A nightmare made by my Sharingan," Dustless said calmly. Everything Jinbee saw just now was an illusion created by Sharingan, and the reality was like this. Jinbee was completely exhausted, and he didn't even have the strength to escape, let alone fight back. Chapter 700. Jinbee's face was as pale as paper. The bones in his body seemed to have been taken away. He fell to the ground powerlessly. He looked up at Dustless, who was walking towards him. According to Dustless, it was all because of the mysterious eyes. "Those eyes of yours. Is it because of him?" Jinbee said with fear. Looking at the strange eyes, he had a sense of panic. "There are such magical eyes in the world. No wonder you are so confident. In the end, you just deliberately want to see me make a fool of myself." Jinbee's tone was filled with self-mockery, loneliness and bleakness. He thought that even if he wasn't Dustless's opponent, he could at least struggle against him. He didn't expect such a ridiculous result in the end. He was like a clown being played around with. "It seems that you finally understand the gap between us." Wu Chen shook his head resolutely and then said softly, "The mystery of Sharingan can't be seen by your mortal body. In fact, when this ability is activated at the beginning, for you who don't know it, you can easily kill it. Then why don't you use this ability? Is there any side effect?" Jinbi asked with a little hope, just to get more useful information from Dustless's mouth. Dustless glanced at Jinbi. He also understood what he was thinking. I have already said before, if I kill you directly, it would be too unfair for you who have worked hard for many years, so I let you dance until now. In the marine, I am the only one who can be so humane. If you meet a kainu, I think I don't need to say it, you know what the consequences will be. Dustless looked at Jinbi with a grateful expression. Jinbi frowned. He didn't comment on Dustless's words. Among the admirals of the marine, a kainu is indeed the most cruel and extreme admiral. Once caught by him, sometimes directly surrendering will also be cruelly burned to ashes by a kainu. Humph, don't even think about making me sneak attack Dustless. That kind of despicable and shameless thing, I can't do it. Jinbi said in annoyance as he remembered Dustless' purpose. The person he respected the most was Whitebeard. Dustless asked him to plot against Whitebeard. Jinbi's feelings could be imagined. Can't do it? It means that you're rejecting my conditions. That doesn't matter. I've already guessed it. Shrugging his shoulders, Wuchen didn't care. His next sentence sent Jinbi to the 18th floor of hell. However, it's not up to you to do it. You don't have the right to choose. As soon as his voice fell, without waiting for Jinbi to react, his Sharingan began to rotate rapidly. How could you have your way? At this moment, Jinbi suddenly opened his mouth and dense water droplets shot out of his mouth like a sharp sword, stabbing towards Dustless's eyes. The eyes of humans were the weakest and the weakest part of their body. Not only humans, but all creatures are the same. I expected you to do this, but you don't know how to be quiet. Kinsusanu. Chakra overflowed from his body. The golden light flashed and then condensed into human bones, protecting Dustless in it. Kaka. The water droplets bombarded Susanu's body like cannonballs, but the latter only trembled a little before sinking into the sea like a stone, forever disappearing without a trace, unable to shake it at all. What the hell is this? Jinbi's eyes widened in shock. The moment this terrifying energy fluctuation appeared, his body trembled uncontrollably in fear, and his eyes couldn't help but be filled with despair. Even the surface of his skin was covered with frost visible to the naked eye. As a veteran of the sea for many years, Jinbi naturally knew the extraordinariness of the mysterious trick in front of him. It was just a shadow, but it made him feel a kind of panic. And this weird golden defensive skeleton, anyone can see that it's only a part of the human hand, obviously not a complete state. However, even so, the exaggerated arm made Jinbi dazzled, because it was so big that it was beyond imagination. Just the arm alone was more than 10 meters high. That's it. As a trophy, you have no right to choose your own fate. Removing Kinsusanu from his body, Dustless's scarlet Sharingan once again floated energy fluctuations, quite mysterious. For the indigenous people of this world, the mysterious energy of chakra is simply incomprehensible. Feeling the horror of those eyes, Jinbi instinctively closed his eyes, but it was too late. His eyes had turned into the same Sharingan as Dustless. It's really busy these days. Time flies. He didn't know how long it had been. Dustless sat on the stone without a care for his image, and his shining eyes gradually slackened. For the next few days, he has been busy. He hasn't found a reasonable time to rest. Dustless-sama, what about this kid? White Zetsu broke out of the ground and looked at the unconscious Jinbi and asked. As for the fishman Arlong, that kid is destined to be locked and impelled down. Without Dustless's permission, no one can bail him out, not even the Shichibukai. Don't worry about Jinbi. He has been under my genjutsu, just let him go. Dustless waved his hand, indicating that he didn't need to care. He also counted on Jinbi to assassinate Whitebeard, and naturally, it was impossible for him to be caught or imprisoned by him. In this case, the previous battle was bound to be in vain. White Zetsu was silent, but then he disappeared into the depths of the ground. This kind of thing doesn't need him and Dustless to worry about. Someone in Impel Down naturally knows what to do. Chapter 701. Time flies, and a few days passed in a blink of an eye. Dustless returned to Mariehua in a daze. As the disguised body of the sacred tree, Dustless has inexhaustible physical strength and almost infinite spirit, but the physical and mental exhaustion is indescribable. After doing something for a long time, anyone will feel disgusted and weak. In particular, Dustless is not a diligent person. After returning to Mariehua, he slept for a day and a night without saying anything. When he got up the next day, it was almost noon. Seeing that Dustless finally regained consciousness from his sleep, Hancock came late to help him dress. Looking at the face of the lotus flower in front of him, Dustless suddenly realized that he had not worn clothes himself for about 10 years, and Hancock served Dustless in his daily life. It has not changed for decades. Unknowingly, Hancock has become an indispensable part of Dustless's daily life. Although Hancock is nearly 30 years old now, she is still a beauty. Her skin is as white as snow. Her natural but very strong body fragrance is irresistible. As long as you smell it, you will be lost in it forever and can't extricate yourself. The clean oval face is as delicate as porcelain, perfect and impeccable, and the shining beautiful eyes are as bright as stars. Hancock's graceful figure looks quite weak on the surface, but her whole body exudes an indescribable noble aura. Her temperament is elegant and noble, and it is filled with indescribable dominance. This little girl has become more and more mature in recent years, and her figure has become more and more attractive. It's really a sin. Shaking his head, Dustless couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. I am afraid that ordinary people will be swallowed and annihilated by her spring eyes if they look at Hancock. Dustless knows that this is not Hancock's fault, because the sweet, sweet fruit itself has charm. Young master, you are not young anymore. Why do you still live like a child? Hancock pouted and said with a little dissatisfaction. Looking closely, he saw Dustless twisting his body like a child, as if he was in pain. I'm really not used to wearing this kind of celestial dragon clothes. I'll just change into a set of casual clothes that I usually wear, Dustless said unhappily. Dustless Celestial's etiquette was heavy, and all aspects were extremely particular, including dressing. For celestial dragon's clothes, Dustless felt uncomfortable wearing them. No, otherwise Mariehua and those scumbags will say that you are an alien. Hancock's face was stern and her tone was firm, leaving no room for retreat. Wuchen was slightly stunned. He looked at the dissatisfied Hancock with a slightly surprised look. Her appearance made people's eyes light up. They're just a bunch of trash living under the glory of their ancestors. There's no need to pay attention to them. Dustless waved his hand and said indifferently. Over the years, Dustless has been regarded as the biggest alien and monster among celestial dragons. Most celestial dragons are afraid of Dustless's unprecedented strength and dare not speak out. They can only talk about him behind his back. Dustless doesn't care about this. It's easy to block a person's mouth, but it's difficult to block a person's heart. Anyway, it won't last long, and sooner or later it will be eliminated by the law of the jungle. By the way, where did the little girl Yueshi go? She used to be very happy. Frowning slightly, Dustless asked. Yueshi used to come to Dustless early in the morning, taking him to walk around and teasing some celestial dragons who didn't open their eyes. Miss went to bed at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning last night, and now she's still in bed. Hancock said helplessly, the father and daughter are the kind of people who like to stay in bed. Hey, this is really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Hearing this, Dustless smiled happily, but in Hancock's ears, it was particularly gloomy. Go and find me a set of suitable clothes. The clothes of celestial dragons are too bulky and not suitable for walking. Dustless, who was uncomfortable, said unhappily. No, master, that group of people will talk about you behind your back. Hancock still can't give in. For her now, Dustless is everything to Hancock. It is a shame to be degraded by the group of incompetent celestial dragons. Are you sure you don't want to take it? Dustless asked with a smile. Hancock nodded resolutely and still refused to give in. Gotcha. The violent chakra rushed out of the body. Dustless's celestial dragon's clothes were shattered in an instant, revealing strong and smooth skin. Master you. Seeing this scene, Hancock couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Suddenly, she felt her body was light and was hugged by Dustless. The hot breath of the man entered her ears and nose. Hancock's face was red, although she and Dustless were not the first time. Disobeying this, master, you must be punished. Dustless's face had a playful smile, and his eyes were particularly explicit, easily penetrating human clothes. Hancock was not a naive little girl. She already understood what Wuchen wanted to do. Her face turned red. She knew that it was still daytime. You are too cunning. It turned out to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Hancock struggled with a red face, realizing that Dustless was deliberately like a turtle in a jar. Wuchen didn't care about this and just laughed it off. Appetite and lust were part of human nature. He was really stifled. This period of time, that brat Yushi had been making a ruckus all day long, causing him to not have a suitable opportunity to nourish himself. Now that Yushi was sleeping, such a rare opportunity, Wuchen naturally wouldn't let it go easily. Chakra erupted from the palm of his hand, and Hancock's clothes suddenly turned into debris. Chapter 702. Although there are essential differences between Dustless and other Tenryubito of Mariehua, they are still quite similar in some aspects, such as the aspect of women. Creak. Creak. The powerful force made the big bed creak. In the corridor, there was a pleasant symphony, and because it was too intense, it gave people the illusion that the whole villa was swaying with it. This relaxing and intense battle only ended in the afternoon. Young master, you are too reckless. Hancock's face was red, and pink charming dimples appeared on her face. After a long drought, at this moment, she was like a bud waiting to bloom, beautiful and moving. She was like a peerless fairy, moving and tugging at people's heartstrings. The extinguished flame in Wu Chen's heart burst out again uncontrollably. Young master, Miss should have woken up. I'll serve her to dress. The shy Hancock quickly escaped. Wu Chen's eyes looked as if he wanted to swallow her, causing Hancock to be frightened. She hurriedly fled like a fox. Because of Dustless's abnormal physical strength, Hancock was devastated and walked unsteadily. This little girl, she is so charming. Opening the window and taking a breath, Dustless's heart calmed down, and he stared at the blue sea in the distance. His heart began to wander, thinking about the current situation. The Straw Hat Pirates are now just young fledglings and can't be used. The New World's Yonko for emperors has been quite quiet recently. Of course, because Dustless kidnapped Fire Fist Ace, the Whitebeard pirates have been on the verge of going berserk. Many pirates who had a grudge against Fire Fist Ace in the past were suppressed by Whitebeard in bloody means. Dustless-sama. Pure white broke out of the ground and White Zetsu came into sight. 7 warlords of the Sea Crocodile, recently investigating the underground palace of Alabasta. White Zetsu revealed the whereabouts of Crocodile. His tone was unprecedentedly dignified. This guy was an ambitious person. He was as dangerous as his nickname Sand Crocodile. He usually lurked quietly in the water. Once he launched an attack, it would be a fatal attack. In particular, Crocodile and Dustless still had a great grudge, and it could even be said that they would not rest until one of them was dead. That kid. He's too naive. What's the movement on the marine side? Sengoku has been paying attention to Crockett's movements, and should have made a preparation plan. Dustless was very sure. A few years ago, Sengoku had put Crocodile on the blacklist. Although he was a Shichibukai, Sengoku still treated him specially and secretly sent marine spies to monitor his every move. Dustless, as a high-level marine, also knew this. Crocodile is very scheming and terrible. The intelligent Sengoku naturally knows that he joined the Shichibukai for other purposes, and has never been careless with Crocodile. Sengoku has noticed the relationship between Nico Robin and Crocodile. It seems that he has sent Kizaru over. White Zetsu said solemnly. He didn't sympathize with Crocodile. This guy was just a chess piece. Robin was actually Dustless's people. Once she was caught by Kizaru, the consequences would be unimaginable. Maybe Nico Robin will be killed directly. White Zetsu's tone was worried. Nico Robin was secretly arranged by Dustless for the Straw Hat Pirates. If she was killed by Kizaru, it means that everything done before may be in vain. Impossible. Sengoku will not kill Robin. It is estimated that he will let Robin secretly interpret the poneglyph and plot the location of the ancient weapon Pluton. Dustless instantly understood Sengoku's intentions. From the beginning, the world government has been chasing after the ancient weapons. If they can catch Nico Robin, they will not kill her, but use her genius brain to find the trace of Pluton. But Robin is my people, it's not Kizaru Ranching's turn to point fingers. His eyes flashed with cold light. Dustless's tone was cold. The overall plan can't be changed because of Kizaru's sudden appearance. Even if he is a Marine Admiral, he is not qualified. It is reasonable to say that the subordinates of the Shichibukai can't be detained by the Marine headquarters, but Nico Robin is a special case. There are too many things involved. It is worth Sengoku to take a risk. Even if the Gorosei knows, they won't blame Sengoku. Where Kizaru came from, we just need to drive him back. Thinking of Borsellino's wretched old face, Dustless had no good feelings. Dustless nodded in agreement. Robin is the hidden weapon of the Straw Hat Pirates in the future. She can't be captured by Kizaru. Crocodile can't resist an admiral. They can only rely on Dustless. Then again, Nico Robin is an important wanted criminal of the world government. Although the bounty is low, she is much more important than some pirates with bounties of hundreds of millions. Crocodile is careless. White Zetsu wondered. Crocodile is not an idiot. He knows the importance of Nico Robin. It is not reasonable for the Marines to find her. Do you think Crocodile did it intentionally? Dustless asked with a smile. Then he shook his head resolutely. His tone was magnetic and full of wisdom. No matter what Crocodile does, it doesn't matter. In the face of absolute strength, all conspiracies and tricks are reflections in the water. Crocodile is as cunning as a mouse, but in the face of Kizaru, any of his strategies are useless. Without the intervention of external forces, Robin will definitely be caught by Kizaru. Rumble. At this moment in the quiet room, the sound of the Den Den Mushi broke the quiet atmosphere. Looking up, the Den Den Mushi kept shouting and even its expression was extremely cautious. Dustless's brows furrowed slightly but still walked over. Chapter 703. Wuchen strode forward with his head held high. There was a heroic spirit surging between his brows. Even though this world had been disrupted by him, some general events were still unavoidable. For example, the Alabastan incident is still the same as before. The only change is that the Marine Admiral Kizaru suddenly intervened. However, the distorted script only needs a little correction to return him to his original position. Long time no see, my fleet admiral. Without waiting for Sengoku to speak, Dustless joked. The person who contacted him using the Den Den Mushi was actually Fleet Admiral Sengoku. Sengoku, who was far away in Marin, was silent. He knew that Dustless was deliberately teasing him. He straightened out his thoughts and went straight to the point. Kizaru has rushed to Alabasta. I hope you can rush there too. Sorry, I don't have time. Without thinking, Dustless refused directly. Hearing this, Sengoku's eyes flashed with disappointment, and then he said to the Den Den Mushi, "In that case, it's a pity goodbye." As soon as his voice fell, without waiting for Dustless to reply, Sengoku hurriedly hung up the phone. This simple appearance made Dustless unable to react for a while, and he stood still like a stone. This guy is so free and easy for the first time. After a while, Dustless was surprised. When he refused other tasks before, Sengoku persuaded him. In Dustless's impression, Sengoku was the first time he was so straightforward. He didn't even bargain. Dustless frowned slightly. As the saying goes, there must be a demon if something is abnormal. Sengoku's behavior is so abnormal. There must be something wrong. It can't be as simple as it seems. Could it be that the old guy is testing me on purpose? Wu Chen guessed with a shrewd look. This is the most likely. Sengoku is meticulous. The most terrible thing is not his strength, but his intelligence. Sengoku is known as the wise general by the world. After a while, Dustless shook his head slightly. Only Hancock knew about his relationship with Nico Robin. Hancock naturally wouldn't betray Dustless. Gather all your clones in Alabasta. Tell me immediately if there's any trouble. Although he didn't know what Sengoku was planning, Dustless still asked White Zetsu's clones to scatter all over Alabasta. Even if Sengoku's conspiracy was flawless, It couldn't escape his eyes. Speaking of which, how is Crocodile's search for the Nether King? Dustless suddenly changed the topic and asked. Hearing this, White Zetsu shook his head and told him everything. Deciphering the poneglyph is not a trivial matter. It requires a lot of time. I don't think Crocodile has made any substantial progress. He is still playing games with the Alabastan royal family. White Zetsu's tone was contemptuous. Crocodile was much more timid than before. It was estimated that he was scared by Dustless, so he became extremely low-key. It didn't take long for him to deal with the Alabastan royal army. He sighed and felt some sympathy for Crocodile. It was because Mariehua was brutally suppressed by Dustless that a shadow was left in his heart. He began to tuck his tail between his legs and live in the dark day after day. Over the years, he rarely heard any news about Crocodile. It's like he evaporated into thin air. All of this was thanks to Dustless. If he didn't deliberately distort Crocodile's mentality, maybe the kid would be happy to be a big thief now, and he wouldn't run to Alabasta, a country full of wind and sand. He even spent several years painstakingly gathering like-minded people from all sides, establishing a huge organization, and finally took the risk of collecting the devil child Nico Robin and looking for ancient weapons. White Zetsu knew that all of this was to retaliate against Dustless. To retaliate against Dustless for the shame that Dustless gave him. You are a man-made product. Why are you sighing, White Zetsu? Glancing at White Zetsu, Dustless's plain face showed defeat. I didn't expect that the things I created would sympathize with the enemy. Nowadays the world is deteriorating. Dustless looked melancholy and emotional. I don't sympathize with him. I just pity Crocodile's naivety. White Zetsu shook his head. He knew Dustless well. Ancient weapons are legendary things. How can it be so easy to come out? In addition, if he really finds ancient weapons, I'm afraid that the effect will be unsatisfactory. It's unrealistic to expect Pluto to make a comeback. There was a sigh in his words, and White Zetsu's face was full of pity. The outside world didn't know Dustless's secret at all. White Zetsu, who inherited part of Dustless's memory, knew that the master was unfathomable and powerful. If you have to find a creature that can defeat Dustless, only the legendary god. Crocodile, don't worry about him, he's just a pawn. Monkey D. Luffy can deal with him. It is estimated that after defeating Crocodile, Luffy's bounty will increase again. It's just enough to annoy that old man Garp. Dustless laughed gloatingly. As for that guy Kizaru, he wants to capture Robin to work for the government? Dream on. A bright golden luster floated all over his body. Although it was warm, it was full of indescribable heat and destruction. It was terrible, as if it could destroy everything in the world. Carefully feeling it, it was actually the ability of the glint fruit. But different from before, the power was different, and there was a huge difference. Unlike Kizaru, Dustless's glint fruit had already reached the level of awakening. Chapter 704. In the cold and dark space, you can't even see your fingers, and there's a deadly depression. Here, it's several times more difficult to breathe fresh air than in other places. It's like a stone is stuck in your throat, and there's a feeling of suffocation. Creak! At this moment, the heavy metal door was easily pushed open by someone. This metal door that weighed several tons was like a toy. Immediately, a glaring light shone from outside the door. Endless cold fog drifted out of the metal door. Soon after, 3 figures came into view. Looking up, it was Dustless and White Zetsu. The other one was Caesar Kalong, who was responsible for helping Dustless build Pluto. I can't fight with Sengoku now. I can only find another way to make Kizaru go back home. Dustless didn't intend to do the task of stopping Kizaru himself. Long ago, he planned for today and prepared a lot of cards. What he was about to use now was one of the cards he prepared. If one looked around, they would discover that this dark and gloomy space was actually a large laboratory. Countless strange creatures were being cultivated here. In the past, after witnessing Vegapunk's scientific achievements, Dustless ordered Caesar to pay more attention to the study of the human body. With his support over the years, Caesar has made rapid progress. Looking up, looking straight at the largest container in front of him, Dustless's eyes were filled with expectation, and his pace became a lot faster. The special pool was filled with a green solution, and a floating man was clearly visible. He had long black hair, a handsome appearance, and there was no breath, no heartbeat, and it's not difficult to see that he's a dead man. However, even if his eyes were closed, his whole body exuded an indescribable temperament, and it was full of overbearingness. In front of him, he felt as small and powerless as an ant. This person is Uchiha Madara. Although he used to control Madara's body to fight Blackbeard, and at that time he also fused with Dustless's cells. Although all aspects have recovered well, there are still flaws. All in all, at that time it was just a last-minute preparation. Could it be that Lord Dustless wants to use Edo Tensei? White Zetsu muttered softly. Dustless resolutely shook his head when he heard this. He can use the Edo Tensei on anyone but Madara. This guy's ambition is monstrous. Even if he is dead, he is still a ghost. He longs to return from hell one day with an invincible posture, and once again rule the world like a god. After pondering for a while, Dustless said resolutely, "Just make him into a heavenly axiom." In fact, Dustless still had the corpses of Hashirama and Tobirama. He could make them into one of the 6 paths, but thinking about Tsunade's feelings, he didn't want to do that. Tsunade was now treating him sincerely. If he turned her grandfather into a puppet, it would be too cruel. Besides, compared to Hashirama, Uchiha Madara wasn't bad. With a slight shift of thought, countless black iron rods appeared in his hands. This guy is my perfect test specimen. Do you want to ruin him like this? Looking at the iron rods in Dustless's hands, Caesar's face was full of reluctance and heartache. Although he didn't know what Dustless was doing, he was sure that he was using his precious test specimen for experiments. Uchiha Madara's body was given to Caesar by Dustless, and it took him several years to maintain the current state. Of course, it was also thanks to Dustless's cells that he was able to repair it so perfectly. You only dealt with the first few processes. The final processing process will be done by Dustless-sama. Turning his head and glancing at Caesar, White Zetsu said indifferently. He has always been respectful to Dustless, but for the other subordinates of Dustless, White Zetsu maintained equal status. The greatness of science, you know nothing. This is my perfect work. Seeing White Zetsu's arrogant look, Caesar shouted unhappily. White Zetsu just glanced at him, and then he was silent. He was created by Wu Chen, and he also inherited some of Wu Chen's personality. He was a man of few words and didn't like to talk nonsense. Especially with Caesar, who was a neurotic person, he had nothing to say. Pucci. The black iron rod was inserted into Madara's body, and it contained unimaginable power. Madara's lifeless body moved strangely. How is this possible? Caesar's eyes widened as he witnessed Madara's slightly twitching body, and he couldn't help but roar out loud. Shut up, I can't concentrate. Slightly squinting his eyes, the black iron rod in his hand appeared again, and once again, it went deep into Madara's body. This time, the location was the head. What's more strange is that Madara's eyebrows were slightly raised, and then under Caesar's stunned gaze, he opened his eyes. He's a zombie. Seeing this, Caesar screamed sharply, with a roar of steel. Is this guy the reincarnation of God? Can he bring people back from the dead? Caesar's body trembled, and his pupils expanded to the largest extent in his life. His eyeballs were even about to burst out of their sockets, and they were permeated with dense blood. You're the world's #1 scientist all day long, and you're so ignorant. White Zetsu took the opportunity to satirize. When it's time to hit the face, decisive counterattack. This is also a characteristic inherited from Dustless. Caesar, however, didn't care. He was panting like a cow, and his face was flushed. Caesar's eyes widened, and he stared at this unprecedented scene. He lost his mind like a child, quietly waiting for Dustless to perform a miracle. Chapter 705. These black iron rods were undoubtedly the tools used by Dustless to control Madara. They were created by Dustless's will, and without them, Madara couldn't be controlled. Oh. I'm afraid you never dreamed that one day you would be transformed into a puppet by me. Dustless looked at Madara with a smile on his face, and he couldn't help but sigh. Dustless suddenly remembered the young him in the past. At that time, he was just a pawn working for Madara. Looking back now, Dustless felt like he was in a dream. Even though he was 50 years old, every time he thought about it, he was still confused. So powerful. Caesar's eyes were shining, and the way he looked at Dustless changed dramatically. Before, it was just simple respect, but now it was like looking at a god. In his eyes, a human being with a mortal body would not be able to reach such a level. It's normal for Caesar to have such an idea. As a native of this world, he doesn't understand and has never seen chakra, a power that he has never been involved in. After a while, Madara was full of catheters, and under Caesar's surprised gaze, he finally stood up. It's the first time I'm using it, although it's not smooth, but it should be no problem to deal with Kizaru. Dustless said calmly. Kizaru was just an admiral of the marine, so it wasn't difficult to stop him. Dustless glanced at Caesar, who was fascinated and puzzled, and couldn't help but shake his head. Naturally, he understood what this old guy was thinking. This wasn't a product of science, but his will. It wasn't something that could be understood by the word science. Yin-yang release was beyond scientific knowledge. Plop! At this moment, with the sound of water flowing, Madara stood up from the pool, and his whole body was full of catheters. His whole body was expressionless, no different from a machine. Dustless wasn't an Uzumaki Nagato. Even though it was his first time using it, and he wasn't very proficient in some areas, he could still control Madara from a distance. 1 meter and 10,000 meters meant the same thing to him. He was not like Nagato, who sneaked up on Muyi and insisted on running near Muyi to strengthen his control of Heavenly Way. Mariehua only needed to control the Heavenly Axiom. As for the other 5, maybe Madara isn't enough, so it's better to test it on someone else. White Zetsu tentatively suggested. Hearing this, Dustless glanced at him faintly. Driving Kizaru away doesn't mean killing him. 1 tendo is enough to deal with him. Caesar listened in confusion. He didn't understand the conversation between Dustless and White Zetsu, but he understood the general meaning. When these things were in their complete state, there should be 6 of them. Is it only perfect if there are 6 of them? Caesar's tone was doubtful. Although he didn't know the strength of this Uchiha Madara in front of him, one thing was certain. Something that Dustless personally made would definitely not be weak. And listening to Dustless's previous words, he wanted to use this thing to deal with Kizaru, who was a marine admiral. You're quite clever. White Zetsu joked. If he could find an opportunity, he wouldn't mind hitting Caesar. This guy relied on the fact that he built Hades for Dustless. He usually thought that he was superior and arrogant. Not to mention White Zetsu, even Doflamingo sometimes didn't put him in his eyes. Wu Chen's forces could be short of anyone, but Caesar could not be short of. Humph. Caesar looked at White Zetsu fiercely, and then asked with a face full of curiosity. This kind of thing can you? No. Before Caesar's voice fell, Dustless directly said. He understood what Caesar meant. It was estimated that he wanted to ask what kind of thing the black conduit on Uchiha Madara's body was. In this world, not everything can be explained by science, and not everything can be evolved by science. This is the gap between strength. White Zetsu despised. The yin-yang release was mysterious and abnormal, beyond the world's understanding. Even chakra didn't know what it was, so Caesar couldn't understand it. Caesar's face was red, and he stared at White Zetsu and said, Science is omnipotent. The development of civilization, to a certain extent, can even bring people back from the dead. You're right. For Caesar's words, Dustless nodded in agreement. There is a saying that every profession has its own master, such as Hades, an ancient weapon crowned with the title of God, is a product of science and technology. It can't be underestimated, and it was made thousands of years ago. In short, there is no limit to everything, and there is no absolute. Everything has its own way, and when it evolves to the extreme, it will turn into something magical. Humph. Caesar looked at White Zetsu and gave him a look of exultation. He looked arrogant, and his excited expression was full of provocation. These two guys. Seeing this scene, Wuchen was speechless about these two buffoons who liked to bicker. Then he swaggered away and left the dark laboratory. At the same time, Uchiha Madara quickly put on his clothes and walked out of the laboratory with a cold expression. For Crocodile, Dustless naturally wasn't interested in such a small character. The purpose of creating Uchiha Madara was to stop Kizaru. Otherwise, Robin would be caught by that wretched old man. Dustless also counted on Robin to be an undercover in the Straw Hat Pirates, so naturally he couldn't do as Sengoku wished. In the future, when it comes to cleaning up the Marines, Tendo will do it. It will save me the trouble of doing it myself. With a gloomy smile, Dustless said. Although he was also an admiral of the Marine, his purpose was different from Sengoku's, so he couldn't let Sengoku do what he wanted. Chapter 706. As soon as he stepped out of the dark laboratory, an anxious figure came into view. The newcomer's skin was wheat-colored, with golden hair and fiery red feathers all over his body, exuding a gloomy and depressing atmosphere. The corner of his mouth outlined an elegant smile. Dustless recognized the person in front of him, or rather, in the whole world, only Doflamingo dressed like this. He is also Dustless's dedicated henchman. Many things are handled by him. For example, Doflamingo, who is over 40 years old this year, is at the level of an admiral and is quite powerful. At the moment, his face was full of anxiety and his brows were wrinkled. Obviously, something bad has happened. I heard that you have been living a good life these days. Before Doflamingo could speak, Dustless spoke first. Because Doflamingo is one of the 7 warlords of the sea, he alone controls the business of both the black and white side, and no one dares to stop Doflamingo, so his business is getting bigger and bigger. He has been living a good life in recent years, and is very carefree. Dustless also turns a blind eye to this. Doflamingo secretly sells all kinds of firearms, and a large number of artificial devil fruits. It is estimated that he has earned at least tens of billions of berries over the years. Of course, people like Dustless and Doflamingo have a diluted concept of money. It is just a number. The most important thing is that a large number of devil fruits and smuggled firearms can make the world chaotic. This is also the reason why Dustless indulges Doflamingo. Doflamingo's old face suddenly collapsed. He took off his sunglasses, revealing a worried face. He looked sallow and emaciated, and it wasn't hard to see that he had been unusually troubled recently. The side effects of the artificial devil fruit army formed by 100 Beast Kaido came out. He killed the subordinates I sent to accept berries, and also shouted to expose me for selling fake goods. The artificial devil fruit that Doflamingo sold to Kaido was a defective product developed by Caesar. It has a lot of side effects. After a long time, it will drain a person's body and drain the host's own energy. It will not take long for the host to die of exhaustion. Selling fake goods. So what? You're making money out of nothing, Dustless said with a straight face. Anyway, there is no guilt in it, and the berry that Kaido sent was just ill-gotten wealth. That bastard, he said that he would inform the Marine headquarters about the news of me selling artificial devil fruit. Doflamingo gritted his teeth and roared. That old man is quite smart. Dustless nodded slightly, secretly praising Kaido's quick-wittedness. Privately developing artificial devil fruits was not a small crime. Especially when Doflamingo sold it to the world's pirates, even the Revolutionary Army's troops, and some war-torn kingdoms. The world government would definitely not be able to bear the consequences. Even the Shichibukai could not bear the anger of the Gorosei, 5 elder stars. Selling the artificial devil fruit to the Yonko 4 emperors was not a joke. It's a trivial matter. If he wanted to tell the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, and the Marine headquarters, what you did was already in broad daylight. Even if I cover up for you, it's useless. Dustless explained with a smile. Doflamingo was stunned. Indeed, since Kaido did not inform the government and the Marine, it means that there is still room for maneuver. It's estimated that he wants the real thing, not the previous fake products. Dustless's eyes flashed. His eyes were shining, as clear as water. Dustless naturally knew what Kaido's idea was. It was nothing more than to truly complete the artificial devil fruit. He did not expose Doflamingo, but quietly explained everything. After all, only Doflamingo has artificial devil fruit in the world, and Kaido does not want to lose this only source. How can that be? That guy is ambitious. If we give him the real devil fruit, he will definitely repay kindness with ingratitude in the future. He will use the artificial devil fruit to deal with us. This is supporting the enemy. Doflamingo struggled. He hated Kaido very much. Now that he wants to support the enemy, it's better to kill him. What about supporting the enemy? Look at the long term. Dustless said without changing his expression. Even if he gets the artificial devil fruit, Kaido will form a devil fruit army to attack the marine and other pirates. For the time being, it will not be Dustless's turn. And funding Kaido to beat the marine and other pirates, Dustless doesn't think there is anything wrong with it. This is also a disguised use. Using Kaido to weaken the strength of the pirates and the marine will reduce the resistance when they rule the world in the future. What if that old guy doesn't know? You also know that the higher the status of a pirate, the more greedy they are. Doflamingo still struggled. Doflamingo had a bone-deep hatred for Kaido. Back then, he was beaten by Kaido until he was looking for his teeth on the ground. If it wasn't for Dustless arriving in time and saving him from the tiger's den, perhaps many years ago, Doflamingo would have already gone to the underworld to report. If that's the case, let him shut up forever. Behind Wuxia, Uchiha Madara's eyes shone with a cold light, and his whole body exposed an extremely powerful aura. His whole body's temperament was like an unsheathed sword, invincible, and extraordinarily overbearing and oppressive. It's obviously a dead body. How can it be? Doflamingo's face was full of horror. Looking at the long black hair of Uchiha Madara, he felt a heavy oppression, making his forehead uncontrollably break out in cold sweat, and his face involuntarily showed fear. Doflamingo felt a fatal threat from this man who was covered in all kinds of black iron rods. It was as if he had met his legendary natural enemy, which made him fearful and panicked. Chapter 707. On the Blue Sea, several battleships were moving quickly. Kizaru stood proudly on the ship, his mouth leisurely blowing smoke rings, his face relaxed. Wearing huge glasses, his demeanor looked quite comfortable. Thinking of the comfortable and leisurely life now, Kizaru's depression also disappeared. It's really not easy to climb to this point. It took a lot of hard work, and now the rain is finally over. It's a sunny day in life. Although he's already half 100 years old, he's still young compared to some big pirates. Admiral Borsellino, we've been sailing for a night. Do you want to find an island to rest? At this moment, a military officer came to Kizaru and tentatively suggested. Looking around, the entire fleet's personnel were tired like dead dogs. Kizaru's eyes flashed with hesitation. Thinking of the importance of Nico Robin, he wanted to refuse directly. But then he looked around and saw everyone's weak appearance. He also knew that it's too much. After all, these were all ordinary Marines. There was a world of difference between their physique and the generals, as well as all other aspects. After about half a day of travel, Kizaru and the others came to a deserted island. It was quite desolate, and there were no birds or beasts, but the size of the island was beyond imagination. A group of soldiers ran to the island to rest, and some even directly vomited. This group of young people is really useless. Seeing this scene, Kizaru couldn't help but shake his head. Compared with his humanoid weapon, all aspects are 1,000 miles away. The humanoid weapon, which is designed with Bartholomew as the basis, has now begun to be mass-produced. In order to prevent accidents, Kizaru brought a lot of them this time. It's just that these are machines, and they don't need to get off the ship, so they stay on the battleship. Kakaka. At this moment, on the shore of the nameless island, strange ripples suddenly splashed on the sea surface. It spread rapidly like a wave, and in an instant, it spread hundreds of meters away. Immediately, under everyone's gaze, several marine battleships slowly sank. Even with Kizaru's calm temperament, he was stunned. He looked at the scene in front of him with a surprised face, and immediately his wretched old face twitched. Although he didn't know what was going on, there was only one possibility for this strange supernatural imagination. They were attacked. You've got guts. A cold light emerged in his eyes. Kizaru wiped his glasses. His squinted eyes enlarged, emitting a dangerous light. His eyes looked straight into the depths of the sea, and immediately his whole body emitted a golden flash. His whole body gradually collapsed, losing its texture, and a large number of photons all floated to the clouds. Using the characteristics of the glint-glint fruit, Kizaru was able to float in the air for a short period of time. In just a few seconds, he was able to condense extremely dense flashes of light. The dazzling narrow light pulsed in Kizaru's palm, covering a surprisingly large area. Kizaru knows that the ship has sunk and there is no possibility of salvaging it, which means that the mission has failed. If they don't catch the culprit, Sengoku will inevitably scold them. Yasukani no Magatama, the densely packed golden light bullets poured down like ants, swallowing the entire sea in an instant. The sinking warship was instantly smashed into pieces. Bang bang bang. The earth trembled violently, raising smoke and dust that covered the sky. Looking straight ahead, there were more than a dozen shadows in the hazy smoke and dust. All of them escaped from the Navy's sunken warship. However, in the face of Kizaru's exaggerated attack, he didn't care about them. Whiz whiz whiz, the golden light bullets were mighty, annihilating everything in the world. Even if the warship was disintegrated, the raging golden light bullets did not stop attacking, but went straight to the dark shadow in the depths of the sea. Under the perception of observation haki, Kizaru clearly perceived the location of the dark shadow. Smart. The mysterious dark shadow on the bottom of the sea raised a playful arc, looking at the light bullets that were about to hit him into a sieve. His face with a black catheter swept a sneer. Bang! At the bottom of the sea, it was as if he was on land, ignoring the gravity of the sea and jumping out of the sea. This guy. Who the hell is he? He can float in the air. Kizaru's eyes widened, and his dry mouth was round. He asked himself that he had fought countless pirates in his life and witnessed countless strange abilities, but it was the first time he saw someone who could fly out of thin air. Quietly staring at the dark shadow in the sky, Kizaru keenly smelled an unprecedented danger. He put away his sloppy appearance and flipped through the information in his mind, but he had never seen or heard of this character. Looking up, the mysterious man's back was facing Kizaru. He could only see his side, his long black hair dancing in the wind, wearing black gloves, wearing red armor. His whole body was filled with a cold breath of decay. The invincible momentum and the spirit of despising all things made Kizaru stunned. Ah, such an arrogant guy is really rare, Kizaru said in a frivolous tone. Even so, Borsellino's face flashed with cold light. He was a marine admiral, but the mysterious man in front of him seemed to treat him as an ant, as worthless as a cabbage on the roadside. Whiz whiz whiz. At this moment, there was a violent vibration in the smoke, and there were as many as a dozen pacifists, big mouths, and dangerous eyes condensed in their mouths. The source of this trick was Kizaru's laser. Of course, because it was not his body, it was much weaker. Naive. At this moment, the mysterious man in the sky suddenly turned his head, revealing a purple eye, with a wicked smile on the corner of his mouth, staring at the roaring flash. The corner of his mouth slightly opened. Will Grave, Border Prison. Chapter 708. There is no doubt that this strange dress, the only person in the world who has Rinnegan and can use the unparalleled ninjutsu like Luan Tomb, Border Prison, is Uchiha Madara, who was made into Tendo by Dustless. There is no one else. Luan Tomb, Border Prison. As Uchiha Madara's voice fell, the void suddenly burst, a violent turbulence, and energy fluctuations visible to the naked eye rapidly expanded and extended, annihilating the light beam in an instant. Even the clouds floating in the void were eroded and erased due to the overbearing power of this attack. This guy actually broke the pacifista's laser, in one go? Kizaru's tone was surprised, and even because of the incredible reason, his mouth trembled slightly, and the whole person lost his usual calmness. He understood the power of the pacifista. especially the laser of the laser, which is his glinting fruit. Kizaru naturally understands its power. Even if a pirate with a bounty of more than 100 million berries is hit, he will be killed in seconds. Tell me your name. Kizaru was not angry, his voice was very soft, but it gave a kind of pleasant feeling. The whole person was like the grandfather next door. All in all, Kizaru at this moment gave people a very strange feeling, and even the marine on the side was puzzled. Uchiha Madara. Uchiha Madara looked at Kizaru with his hands crossed in front of him. Tendo Uchiha Madara raised the corner of his mouth slightly, and then his lips opened slightly, calmly saying his name. Uchiha Madara? Kizaru, who had never heard of this name, frowned, and his mentality that had not been angry for many years flashed anger, and there was always an unknown fire burning in his heart. He didn't know why, but he always felt that Uchiha Madara's every move and every word was full of contempt, as if nothing in the world could be reflected in his eyes. Kizaru, this kid is smart. Dustless, who was far away in Mariehua, laughed. Others may not know what Kizaru meant, but he understood very well that Kizaru actually stretched out his intention to win him over. After all, Uchiha Madara has no bounty, and his strength is not bad. If he can be pulled into the marine, it will be a blessing. The idea is beautiful, but the reality is really cruel. The mission is complete. It's time to retreat. Completely ignoring Kizaru, Uchiha Madara showed everyone his back. His simple appearance made everyone stunned. Kizaru and the others felt worse than eating 10 pounds of flies. In front of this man, they were all insignificant pawns. You want to leave? How can I explain this to Sengoku? After several provocations, Kizaru's heart was as calm as an ancient well. His flame index also increased. His face was cold, and he immediately turned into a golden photon and whizzed out. The sharp whistling sound in the air made one's scalp tingle. Such a big formation. Do you think that I wouldn't notice you and purposely go easy on you? Uchiha Madara's footsteps stopped as he noticed the loud noise behind him. He muttered to himself as he formed a seal with both hands. In just a blink of an eye, a simple earth release ninjutsu was completed. Earth escape, earthquake core. The earth behind Uchiha Madara trembled, and a solid earth wall instantly condensed, separating Kizaru and Uchiha Madara. How can such a scam work? With a sneer on his face, Kizaru's hands suddenly condensed the outline of a golden sword. Kusanagi Cloud Sword. It was a divine sword that could cut through iron as though it was mud. The sharpness of the sword was enough to cut through meteorites. The blazing heat that emanated from the sword was something that no one dared to underestimate. As long as one came into contact with it, they would be melted into nothingness by the blazing heat. Kacha. The wall that rose from the ground was penetrated by the flash of light, and then shattered with a bang. Please go to the marine headquarters with this old man, otherwise. Kizaru's words stopped abruptly as the blazing temperature hit his face. He looked up and saw a giant fireball roaring in front of him. Due to its terrifying power, the ground was scorched yellow, and hideous cracks appeared. It was no different from a riverbed that had been dry for several years. In an instant, it swallowed Kizaru and passed through his body. So strong. Looking at the fireball penetrating his body, Kizaru couldn't help but take a deep breath. Perhaps if he didn't launch his elemental transformation ability at the last moment, he would have been seriously injured. This guy, what kind of ability is he? Paramecia? It shouldn't be. Logia? It doesn't seem to be. Kizaru carefully looked at Tendo Uchiha Madara, and his clear mind fell into a dead end. It was the first time he met such a tricky enemy. However, thinking of his huge advantage, Kizaru's old face changed faster than flipping a book. The biggest advantage of the glinting fruit is its terrifying speed and powerful strength. With a golden luster, Kizaru completely ignored the distance. In less than a blink of an eye, Kizaru jumped close to Uchiha Madara. Dustless, who was far away in Mariehua controlling the heavenly axiom, just smiled indifferently and was unprecedentedly calm. Speed is power. Have you ever been kicked at the speed of light? The voice of the vicissitudes of life rang in Uchiha Madara's ears, and he looked at Kizaru's calf that had condensed a dazzling light. Seeing this, Uchiha Madara just smiled disdainfully. and the black ball that had quietly condensed in his hand was thrown into the sky. Gravity is the natural enemy of everything. Even light is no exception. Have you ever been swallowed by gravity? Admiral Borsellino, Chibaku Tensei. Chapter 709. The black sphere in the sky looked harmless and small enough to be ignored, but what frightened Kizaru was that his whole body was out of control. Instinctively, he wanted to turn into a flash of light and slip away, but the deadly gravity made him afraid to take risks, and an inexplicable voice in his heart warned him not to elementalize. Ka ka ka. The earth kept trembling and jumping like a swamp, extremely fragile. Boom boom boom. He didn't know how long it took, and finally the earth, which could not withstand this gravity, burst open, and a huge gap appeared. The ground was easily torn apart by the penetrating gravity of Chibaku Tensei, leaving a terrible gap. Could it be that? What a joke! For the first time in his life, Kizaru's eyes showed panic. Under this boundless gravity, he couldn't move an inch. His body was invisible, as if he was carrying a mountain without a physical body, and breathing was 100 times more difficult than usual. He vaguely understood Uchiha Madara's intention to use the small black sphere as the core to form an unprecedented giant meteorite. No, I'm just sitting there waiting for death. The hesitation in his eyes turned into determination as he stared at the sphere in the sky that was about to swallow the world. Kizaru was scared, and the void was obviously changing. The terrifying gravity could even distort space and time. Once he was taken in by that thing, he couldn't do anything even if he tried his best. Without thinking, his body directly turned into a photon and whizzed out. What can you do under the gravity of Chibaku Tensei? Dustless, who was far away in Mariehua, sighed helplessly. Light was attracted by gravity. If Kizaru had been prepared in advance, he could have escaped, but he was unaware that he had been covered by gravity and was destined to be swallowed by Chibaku Tensei. The elementalized Kizaru not only did not escape the swallowing of Chibaku Tensei, but he was also quickly crushed by Chibaku Tensei. At the moment when he was about to be crushed, a little crystal mist suddenly appeared in the air. This is ice dregs. Dustless, who was controlling Uchiha Madara, was puzzled as he caught the falling crystal transparent body. Boom boom boom. The void flashed with a dazzling fire, and the broken walls immediately fell under the pull of gravity. Tendo Uchiha Madara turned his head slightly, and the figure behind him was looming in the smoke and dust. Rinnegan rippled. Far away in Mariehua, Dustless's doubts also disappeared. No wonder Sengoku called to deliberately test me. It turned out to be for this reason. It's a pity that he didn't wait for me, but he waited for Uchiha Madara. Dustless gloated with the corner of his mouth slightly raised. It's really unfortunate to meet two admirals, Tendo Uchiha Madara said with a headache. Others couldn't see the blurred reflection in the dust, but Uchiha Madara could see it clearly. His tall body was nearly 3 meters tall, not far from Kizaru's height. I don't hear any regret or misfortune in your tone. Please at least tell us your purpose for attacking the Navy out of nowhere. At least we can give the fleet admiral an explanation. Akiji walked out of the smoke with a lazy face. His expression was sloppy, but his voice was extremely cautious. Before this, how did you know the weakness of Chibaku Tensei? Turning his head, Uchiha Madara asked with interest. Hearing this, Akiji shook his head and shrugged. It turned out to be Chibaku Tensei. Its power is as arrogant as its name. It's not a weakness. I was just taking a gamble. I couldn't just sit there and wait for death, so I directly attacked the black sphere. As for whether I could save Borsellino or not, it would depend on his luck. But now it seems like I made the right bet. Uchiha Madara heard this and nodded sincerely. The weakness of Chibaku Tensei was to attack the black sphere before it was formed, so Chibaku Tensei would collapse by itself. At the same time, golden photons condensed around Akiji. At first, it was a little bit, and then gradually increased, converging into a tall figure with the word, justice, clearly visible behind the white cloak. It was Admiral Kizaru, but because of the demonic scene just now, his face was a little pale and bloodless, and he was still in shock. Presumably, It was the first time Kizaru had experienced such a horrible scene in recent decades. It's really unpredictable. The person I was waiting for didn't come, but it seems that I'm waiting for a more powerful person. Really, why are powerful enemies always on the opposite side of the marine? By the way, you haven't returned to the purpose of attacking the marine, Akiji asked while looking at Uchiha Madara's eyes. Dustless Mariehua's mouth curled into a smug smile. The person he was waiting for didn't come. He was afraid that he was talking about him, but unexpectedly, he was waiting for Uchiha Madara. Reason? What reason do you need? When a pirate meets a marine, or a marine meets a pirate, what reason do you think is needed to fight? What other reason do you think is needed? Facing the two admirals, Uchiha Madara replied calmly. His plain tone was exactly the same as the dialogue between ordinary people, maintaining calmness. In the eyes of Kizaru and Akiji, it was very strange. Don't say that they met two admirals at the same time. Even if they met one of them, the pirates often fled without fighting. Be careful, this guy is very evil, Kizaru said cautiously. What kind of ability does he have? Akiji asked, thinking of Madara's ability. Hearing this, Kizaru's face suddenly stiffened, and he shook his head with a pale face, and then said in a half-joking, half-serious tone. Maybe in the future, there will be more devil fruit, and the ability user himself is this guy named Uchiha Madara. Chapter 710. Hearing Kizaru's words, Akiji's face changed slightly. Perhaps Kizaru was exaggerating, but he is also one of the most powerful people in the Marine headquarters. For Kizaru to say such words, it can be seen how terrifying Uchiha Madara is. Akiji was a little more wary of Madara. This yellow monkey is quite clever and has rich combat experience. He deserves to be a Marine admiral. Dustless, who was far away in Mariehua, nodded secretly. He just tried to use armament haki, and it was easy and simple. Strangely, he couldn't control Uchiha Madara to use armament haki. It was the same as the original Naruto world. Dustless used the body of elephant turn technique, but he couldn't launch the ability of glint glint fruit. It's probably because of the different power systems of the two worlds. Uchiha Madara didn't touch armament haki, but it doesn't matter. Shaking his head, Dustless instantly understood the reason. His deep eyes were extraordinarily wise and confident. Even if Uchiha Madara doesn't use haki, if it wasn't for Akiji, the battle might have ended. It's strange that he can't use armament haki, but in any case, we have a great advantage. Akiji's surprise turned into relief. He never thought that Uchiha Madara wouldn't be able to use haki. This way the odds of winning are much greater. Logia users are the natural enemies of those who can't use haki. As soon as Akiji's voice fell, Uchiha Madara sneered. Arrogant words? A natural enemy of mine? So what if you don't use haki? Do you think I can't do anything to you too? His body full of black iron rods was oppressive and terrifying. In the dark, Uchiha Madara seemed to be emitting black gas behind him. Combined with the strange eyes, he was like a death god coming out of the underworld. It's actually very simple to deal with Logia. You don't necessarily need armament haki, other abilities will do. His hands quickly printed, and Uchiha Madara's mouth curved. If you dare to use the elements, you can try it. This guy is really arrogant. With a snort, Akiji's eyes flashed with a cold light. At the same time, Uchiha Madara's hand print was completed, and an endless sea of fire spewed out of his mouth. Fire style, grand fire annihilation. Scorching hot flames that almost covered the entire sky came rushing over in a grandiose manner. This unprecedented scale covered the sky and covered the earth. Even the sky was dyed a deep red, and the scene was extremely spectacular. Kizaru calmly elementalized, and so did Akiji. However, in the next second, Akiji ended his elemental transformation and revealed his original body. His old face was tense and looked a little depressed. What's wrong? You don't dare to elementalize? Uchiha Madara teased. Akiji's expression was within his expectations. Kizaru narrowed his eyes and looked at the melted water droplets under Akiji's feet. He then looked at the hot environment around him. Kazan's body is melting. His attributes are restrained. Kizaru Zhangwei said as he recalled the black sphere. Sometimes, the suppression of one's celestial attribute was even more terrifying than domineering. Akiji's old face was gloomy. Fortunately, he reacted in time and ended his elemental transformation. Otherwise, his body that had turned into ice would have been directly evaporated by the monstrous fire. Iseon. He leaped up and shot out long and narrow icicles from his arms. Kakaka. Countless ice dregs extended from the ground, and the earth was instantly frozen. Immediately, it rose violently and turned into an iceberg of more than 10 meters, trying to block the fire. Fire can restrain water, but water can also restrain fire, and even has an advantage. Tomb of Samsara, border prison. His eyes were filled with ripples, and then in Madara's sight, several shadows flew out quickly. Each of them had infinite power, and looked no different from Uchiha Madara. Kakaka. The majestic ice mountain was instantly smashed by the shadows, and the sea of fire swept out and swallowed Akiji in an instant. The boundless sea of flames swept down with monstrous momentum. Everywhere it passed, it was a complete mess. The ground was roasted to an unbearable state. Hideous cracks appeared on the ground, and the earth was slowly cracking apart. This armament haki is really a headache. Uchiha Madara sighed helplessly. Nonsense, even if you feel a headache, at least show some embarrassment. Your acting is really bad. Admiral Kizaru took a cigarette and said sarcastically. In the sea of fire, Akiji stood tall and straight like a mountain. However, this Akiji was not that Akiji. His whole body was as black as ink, and even deeper than ink, shining in the sea of fire. Madara's eyes passed through the thick sea of fire, and Akiji, who was in the state of armament haki, came into view. Every inch of his skin turned into hard steel, resisting the erosion of the flame. Dustless, who was controlling Madara in Mariehua, was calm, and felt that this scene was very normal. Armament haki is a universal skill in this world. Virgo, as a vice admiral of the Marine, can be fully armed. There is no reason why Akiji as an admiral can't do this. Moreover, he was better than Virgo in every aspect. This feeling is really uncomfortable. Looking around at the blazing sea of fire, even because the fire was too fierce, it burned on Akiji's whole body, and the hot temperature was enough to evaporate everything. Akiji, who was in armament haki, looked cold. As long as he was elementalized, he was afraid that he would be annihilated on the spot. Akiji's heart was filled with unspeakable grievances. Being forced to such a point by a person who could not use armament haki, Akiji felt bad luck and helplessness, and at the same time, there was fire in his heart. Chapter 711. Water and fire were naturally two opposite attributes. The moment the fire appeared, Akiji felt uncomfortable all over, as if he was going to be melted. His body kept sweating. Water can restrain fire, and fire can restrain fire. In the end, who can restrain who and who is better depends on the level of strength. You seem to have forgotten the existence of this old man. Kizaru's calf condensed a powerful flash, and the dazzling light could burn human eyes, making people not dare to look directly at it and instinctively close their eyes. Lightspeed kick. With Kizaru's voice fell, a straight ray of light shot out, cutting through the void, and in the blink of an eye, Uchiha Madara was swallowed. Seeing this, Uchiha Madara still held his hands in front of him and didn't hide. His purple pupils splashed with ripples, and his shadow immediately responded. Boom boom boom. A harsh explosion sounded out of thin air, and the earth trembled, followed by a huge fireball rising into the air, and the blazing impact spread out. On the ground where Uchiha Madara stood, a clear scorched black hole came into view. Even if you don't die, you'll lose a layer of skin. Kizaru said calmly while blowing smoke rings. The power of Lightspeed kick is amazing, and it can even destroy a mountain and tear a huge crack in the solid earth. The consequences can be imagined if a human body withstands it. Is that so? Then you're doomed to be disappointed. In the black smoke of burning flames, a figure loomed, and the burning flames around him tried to swallow him, but they were crushed like candles in the wind. In the flames, Uchiha Madara was cold, and every time he took a step, The burning flames would gradually extinguish and collapse. Boom! With the last footstep falling, Uchiha Madara stepped out of the flames intact. This guy impossible, I just hit him head-on. Kizaru frowned and said with a tone of disbelief, "The mystery of Tomb of Reincarnation, border prison, is mysterious, and you ordinary people will never understand it." Uchiha Madara's face remained cold as he said indifferently, "Is it possible that my kick missed? Impossible." Looking at the intact Uchiha Madara, Kizaru's face was strange. At this time Akiji, who was in the state of armament haki, also came to Kizaru. "I don't think so. Something seemed to have blocked the attack for him." Akiji guessed. He had been observing Uchiha Madara's movements. The moment he was attacked, the flash exploded in advance, and it didn't hurt Uchiha Madara's body. "You guys are quite smart." Tendo Uchiha Madara couldn't help but look at Akiji with admiration. One was probing the enemy from the front, while the other was secretly observing the enemy's every move. Their coordination was flawless. These two guys are good. It seems that in the past few decades, the strength of the three admirals has progressed rapidly. Dustless, who was far away in Mariehua controlling Tendo Uchiha Madara, sighed. "The admiral's combat experience is extremely rich." Akiji and Kizaru joined the Marine when they were 20 years old. Now the youngest of them, Akiji, is nearly 50 years old. They have been fighting pirates for 30 years. 30 years of rich experience, as well as combat experience, is not a joke, especially when it comes to devil fruit ability users. Some ability users have never heard of or seen before. Therefore, the Admiral's adaptability is extremely strong. Although they are extremely surprised by Uchiha Madara's ability, they still remain calm. It seems that it's time to retreat. There's no need to entangle with the two of them. The mission is completed. Dustless pondered. His trip was just to stop Kizaru from capturing Robin. Now that their battleship has sunk, it means that there is no means of transportation. When they arrive at Alabasta, maybe Robin will have joined the Straw Hat Pirates and left. Want to go? If I let you go so openly, how will I explain it to Fleet Admiral Sengoku? Kizaru's eyes reflected a cold light, and he immediately waved his hand with great momentum. Like a sculpture of a pacifist, he moved side by side to block Uchiha Madara. A mantis trying to stop a chariot. No one can stop me if I want to go. Not to mention the two of you. Even if the Marine's top battle powers gather together, they won't be able to do it. The void vibrated. Ripples visible to the naked eye, and a strong repulsive force expanded. Uchiha Madara mobilized a large amount of chakra, and there was even a little blood in his eyes. The whole person was particularly terrifying. This state was no different from an erupting volcano, full of indescribable danger. Super Shinra Tensei. The whole island trembled violently, and the high-density chakra in the body erupted. The impact was as vast as the ocean, and the earth under Uchiha Madara's feet was directly wiped out. Akiji and Kizaru were fine. Both of them were extraordinary, and their observation haki and armament haki were unparalleled. Although they were affected, they escaped the fatal surprise attack. However, the pacifist was not so lucky. Ka. The pacifist's body suddenly cracked under the impact. Even if their skin was as hard as iron, it was difficult to guarantee that they would survive. Their bodies were torn apart by the boundless force, revealing various mechanical parts. That Vegapunk is worthy of being a peerless genius. Uchiha Madara's eyes narrowed, and his anger converged. Although the modified pacifista's stats weren't as good as the original Bartholomew Bear in all aspects, its body's hardness had increased by quite a bit. The special materials used to construct the pacifista were obviously not ordinary. Chapter 7:12. As far as the eye could see, the entire central area of the island had suffered an unprecedented impact. The earth had been flattened. The island had suffered a direct impact from the Super Shinra Tensei. The devastated island was a shocking sight, and the giant craters were obvious. This extremely large area of effect attack left everyone dumbfounded. Not only that, the exaggerated destructive power was unforgettable. The entire terrain of the island was rewritten by this unprecedented attack. Kazan, are you sure the opponent we are fighting is really human? Kizaru's face was covered with dust. At this moment, he looked like an old man who hadn't taken a bath for many years. This should be maybe. Not only Kizaru, but even Akiji had doubts. The answer sounded ambiguous. Such a large-scale attack was beyond imagination. And the two of them were fortunate enough to follow Garp and Senshi Sengoku to fight against the legendary pirate king, Gold Roger. Roger, who was almost deified by the world, may not be able to make such a shocking attack. One move almost destroyed the entire island. Anyway, it is necessary to investigate the origin of this guy, otherwise we can't complete the task. Kizaru flicked the dust and lit a cigarette. Hearing this, Kazan nodded in agreement and stared at Tendo Uchiha Madara, who was covered with black tubes, with a frozen face. Let's go together. The moment Kizaru's voice fell, he disappeared. Looking at the fragments of the Kazuchiha Madara crushed like ants, his old eyes flashed with disapproval. These simple machines can be mass-produced as many as you want. Yasakani no Magatama. Knowing the strength of Uchiha Madara, Kizaru chose to be cautious. He waved his hand and used his most powerful move. Dark blue light erupted. Unlike the golden giant Dustless's body, a blue skeleton rose from the ground and defended Uchiha Madara. Kensusunu. With Uchiha Madara's low voice, the dark blue light turned into a real one. Clang, clang, clang. Kensusunu was swallowed in the blink of an eye. Because the light was too strong, it covered the dark blue luster of Kensusunu and dyed it golden. Ka ka ka. In the swallowed Kensusunu, the sound of bones cracking could be faintly heard. It seems that you are not invincible. Like I said, God is fair to everyone. Kizaru said calmly as he tasted the rich tobacco in his mouth. Following his gaze, the dark blue skeleton gradually collapsed. Let me give him a boost. Qingji revealed a stern expression. Both of his eyes were as sharp as a blade. Icy cold air gathered on his right arm, and quickly formed a large exquisite ice sculpture. Ice stormy pheasant beak. A huge ice bird condensed in an instant, flapping its wings vigorously, sending out a piercing cold wind, and with a powerful impact, it swept towards Uchiha Madara. The cold and gloomy air emanating from his body could freeze time and space. Ka ka ka. At the same time, the impenetrable Susanoo that protected Uchiha Madara finally couldn't withstand the erosion of the light, and it shattered with a bang. Whoosh! The cold wind blew. The cooperation between Kizaru and Akiji was quite close. At the moment when Susanoo collapsed, the ice bird condensed by Akiji roared and instantly froze Uchiha Madara into a shining ice sculpture. Under the illumination of the sun, it was extraordinarily beautiful and full of artistic feeling. This monster is finally locked in a cage. His tight heart relaxed, and Akiji breathed a sigh of relief. His slightly tired old face also regained its luster. What an unexpected disaster. I was forced into such a mess by a guy with no bounty. Really, how come there are more and more monsters in this world? Looking at himself, Kizaru couldn't help but complain. Looking up, there were many scorched holes in Kizaru's clothes, all thanks to Uchiha Madara. Contact the fleet admiral. The battleship has been completely destroyed by him. We can only send someone to pick up. Ka ka ka. Akiji's voice didn't fall, and the ice that froze Uchiha Madara made a crisp roar, and many cracks could be clearly seen on the surface of the ice. Could it be that this guy is still moving? Akiji's eyes were filled with cold light, and he didn't hesitate to touch the ground with his hands, and the whole earth was instantly swallowed by the ice. Ice Age. The more piercing ice swallowed Uchiha Madara, and the broken ice all over his body healed and solidified again. Compared to the previous ice bird, this Ice Age was undoubtedly more terrifying. He has such a strange ability. Maybe it's really like what you said. I don't know when an all-rounder like him will appear. Thinking of Uchiha Madara's dazzling ability, Akiji couldn't believe it. All-rounder? So what? In front of justice, even if he's invincible, he has to stretch his neck and accept the punishment. Kizaru flicked the ash off his cigarette and said lightly, I say, are you two mistaken? Do you think that's the real me? At this moment, a ghostly voice came from behind Kizaru and Akiji. What you see may not be true. What you painstakingly deal with is actually just my shadow. Do you think you're winning? Are you Marines so naive? Turning his head, Uchiha Madara with various black tubes all over his body mocked. He touched his chin indifferently, and the sharpness in his eyes converged. Damn it. This tone, and this expression, why do I feel so familiar? Kizaru's old face was full of puzzlement, and he seemed to have an impression of Uchiha Madara's speech and behavior. What kind of ability is it? Forget it, for the time being, you're an all-rounder. Akiji's doubts were instantly relieved, and he was no longer entangled. After capturing this guy alive, all the puzzles will be solved. Ka ka ka. At the same time, the ice that froze Uchiha Madara also shattered, but there was no one inside. Originally, I had wanted to simply leave. However, it would appear that if I don't teach you two brats a lesson, you two won't let me leave unscathed. Tendo Uchiha Madara's voice became indifferent, and at the end of his words he disappeared. So fast. Seeing Tendo Uchiha Madara disappear in an instant, Kizaru and Kazan immediately used their observation haki to perceive Tendo Uchiha Madara. Tsk, let me see how much you three great generals have grown. Dustless Mariehua's face was full of playfulness, and he suddenly found that his boring life was a lot happier. And then he seriously controlled Uchiha Madara's movements. Unfamiliar the first time, familiar the second time. At first it was still not too familiar, but along with the passage of time, Dustless already became more and more proficient in using heavenly Dao spots. Found it. With a cold light in his eyes, his observation haki captured Uchiha Madara's murderous intent, and the air around his body quickly froze and turned into several sharp spears. Ice Double Thorn Spear. Aiming in the direction of Uchiha Madara, it immediately whistled out mercilessly. Uchiha Madara's eyes narrowed slightly, and he noticed the ice spears shooting towards him. His sunken eyes rose, his hands slightly opened, and a perfect defensive circle suddenly formed. Shinra Tensei. The 360-degree defense was watertight, protecting Uchiha Madara. The space was tightly sealed, and even the air was isolated. Bang bang bang, Shinra Tensei was enough to defend against most physical attacks, and the ice spears were easily bounced off and penetrated deep into the soil. The sharp spears were hard to imagine, and they directly cut the ground. A normal human would have been sliced in half with just a light slash. Laser. A large number of photons condensed at the tip of his thumb, and the shining light made people unable to open their eyes, and immediately rushed out, swallowing Uchiha Madara. Seeing this, Tendo Uchiha Madara just didn't care about it. The void in front of him slowly distorted, showing a strange vortex shape. Kamui. The powerful roar fell, and the vortex-shaped space turned into a bottomless black hole, easily swallowing the gorgeous light beam. Seeing this, Kizaru suddenly froze, and immediately realized that Uchiha Madara was approaching. He was about to elementalize, but suddenly remembered the terrible gravity before, and immediately cancelled the plan. His right arm glowed with golden light, and a sharp sword condensed in an instant. Clang! The empty space suddenly had a spark, and immediately saw two figures flashing out of thin air. Uchiha Madara, holding a black iron stick in his hand, easily blocked Kizaru's attack. Don't forget me. Akiji attacked from behind, holding an ice sword in his hand, and used all his strength to stab Uchiha Madara's head. You are too careless, I never said that I would fight alone. Seeing this, Uchiha Madara turned his head to look at Akiji, and the corner of his mouth swept with a gloomy smile. His eyes rippled, and a very dangerous wave quietly spread. At this moment, time seemed to stop. Will grave, border prison. Akiji's expression suddenly solidified, and the hair on his body stood up uncontrollably. He remembered Uchiha Madara's strange trick before, and his face was full of determination. Instinctively, he smelled ominous and dangerous. Busashoka hardening. In an instant, his whole body turned into black steel, strengthening his own defense. Boom! When the sharp ice spear was about to pierce Uchiha Madara, Akiji's right face was hit by a strong attack, and his whole body flew upside down and hit the ground heavily. And you? His eyes then turned to Kizaru, and his pupils once again swayed with a dangerous light. Boom. With Akiji as an example, although Kizaru had been carefully prepared, he still couldn't avoid the same fate. His abdomen was hit hard, and he was hit by a powerful force. Akiji and Kizaru couldn't see it, but in Uchiha Madara's sight, there were as many as 5 shadows protecting him. Damn bastard, you don't know how to respect the old. Kizaru stood up awkwardly, and his heart was extremely sullen. It's not that he didn't want to elementalize, but Uchiha Madara's method of suppressing his attributes was too terrible. Thinking of the previous experience, Kizaru's scalp was numb. Once controlled by the ghost called Chibaku Tensei, he was afraid that he would live in a meteorite for the rest of his life. Akiji's old face was also ugly. He didn't dare to elementalize easily. If he was caught, he would be directly evaporated by Uchiha Madara's hot flame. Therefore, Kizaru and Akiji could only rely on Busashoku Haki to resist. Although they would be attacked, the risk was much smaller. One wrong step, and they may fall. Now you should know what you and I are aware of. Uchiha Madara glanced at the two and whispered. Kizaru and Akiji looked at each other, and still refused to give up. There was no other reason except that the admirals who died in battle had never been heard of escaping from pirates. Otherwise, they would have no face to return to the marine headquarters. This unequal war didn't end until late at night. Uchiha Madara still left safe and sound. Akiji and Kizaru couldn't stop him at all, and could only watch. Dustless naturally wouldn't waste time with Kizaru and Akiji, because this was originally to stop Kizaru from capturing Robin. Destroying their battleship was actually the end of the matter. However, Kizaru and Akiji refused to let go, so he could only fight. I guess there will be a bounty tomorrow. Staring at the sea in the distance, Dustless said calmly. His performance was unusually indifferent, which was inevitable. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.